It was slippery, so if we stayed in it, there was a much less risk of them bumping into one of us. And if all three of us had to weave through every time, we would raise our chances of them picking up our scent. Bobby seemed up to the task, so we let him do it. And he was doing phenomenal. He was tiptoeing his way through this squid horde, filling it up a little bit each time. Everything in me wanted to get out of this puddle because, again, we didn't know what this liquid was, but it's not like there was anything around to wipe it off. So even if I got out of the puddle, I wasn't going to be able to get it off of me. So my risk manager calculator in my brain just told me to stay in it. So that's what I did. And finally, after about 10 rounds of Bobby going back and forth, he signaled to us that this one was probably going to be the last one. So Heidi and I stood up and we were attempting to not slip because it was very difficult.
What's up, Renee?
But we managed to get out of it, and we followed him through the horde, all three of us tiptoeing as quiet as possible, and we very quickly realized that it was a fantastic idea to only have one person do it, because all three of us moving through this horde clearly changed the tone. They seemed to be whipping their heads around a little bit more actively and sniffing the air. They knew something was up. It was as if they got a faint scent of us, but they couldn't be sure. More and more of them started sniffing the air.
Ain't gonna lie, I'm just watching Dougie Corrado. Dougie Corrado is like a storyteller type shit. One of my favorite my favorite storyteller. I'm gonna say it like that. My favorite storyteller of the horror genre. So he basically talking about how him and his friend, basically his friend, he like to explore, go to different places and shit, right? So he basically loved going with his friend because, you know what I'm saying, who don't want to be in the mix, you know what I'm saying? So boom, he go with his homeboy, they go to this place because his friend like to go to different places, explore shit, you know what I'm saying, different types of stuff, see what's going on. He want to see ancient writings and shit because he goes stupid over that type of stuff, right? So they come across, it was like this whole thing of trees, right? This whole bed of trees, like a whole area of trees, right? And in the middle of that bed, it was just a hole in the middle of just a I don't know how to explain it to y'all. Like, imagine a tree line, right? But in the middle of that bitch is just a big ass hole. Like somebody made that bitch, right? Boom. Type shit. I heard of it, haven't seen it. Yeah, because, you know what I'm saying? He coming up. He ain't even coming up. He up. Type shit. But boom, back to the story. What up, Danny? So they basically walked through this shit, right? And it's in the middle of nowhere, by the way. It's in the middle of nowhere. The woods in the middle of nowhere. No human activity, nowhere to be found, right? Boom. They go through this shit because they look through. Actually, at first they look through it to see what's in it. They see this village in there full of people, right? I'm telling y'all what I'm watching right now. Basically, I'm finna catch y'all up to speed. So they see this village of people and shit, and they having a whole meeting, the whole meeting, right? So they can't hear them. They don't know what's going on. So they just sitting there. They trying to watch these people like what, like this kind of weird type shit, right? Boom, the people get this one specific girl. They tie her up, like y'all know them little y'all know Animal Control, the little sticks they be having with the little rope around that bed when they get the dog. They on some shit, kind of like a modern day lasso. I'll say that, right? They get that and they put it on her hands, and then it's like behind her. So they pushing a stick in her back, in her lower back. So she's moving like that type shit. I think it was, yeah, he did say it was in the lower back. So she moving type shit. They over here like, yo, we about to go confront these people, like what they doing type shit. Like this low key, y'all, we just caught y'all doing some weird shit, right? Boom. They got stick. Like they strapped. Like, you know what I'm saying? You gotta be strapped in these weird ass places, fam. Especially if you don't know where you're at. I mean, they know where they at, but especially if you don't be around here a lot, type shit, right? Boom, they go through. They creep up on the people. At this point, the people are dead ass like yelling type shit. Like they having a whole, you know what I'm saying? They having a whole like argument, I'll say. So they ain't even hear the argument, I'll say. So they ain't even hear. Bro, It's my life, bro. Still not working on my life, bro. I wanted to. So they ain't even hear argument on six. So they ain't even. There it go. 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 It's back. I think 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 it's back. Let me know if it's. Y'all can see me, hear me? Y'all can hear me? Y'all can see me? Thumbs up in the chat. Thumbs up in the chat. I think it's back. I think it's back. I think it's back. It's back. It's back. It's back. It's back. It's back. Okay, boom. Right. They in here. She I don't know. Like she seemed mad that they went through with her. I still don't understand why. Because they basically just risk their necks for you type. I would be pissed off, right? But boom. So he looked back at where they just, you know what I'm saying, where they just walked through the gap. It's like a tree line, and then it's just this big ass gap. Like no trees in this specific area right here. It's trees like right here. Right here is no trees. So he go through it to see if he was gonna see the people again, because the people he looked behind him, they disappeared. The village people, the village, everything type shit. So they walked through. He over here like walking through, looking back, doing all. He like what type shit, right? Confused. So she see this and she like yo, she ain't said like yo, but like the female low key kind of realized he was confused on what's going on, so she was sugarcoating shit the whole time, mind you. She not telling the full story, so she just started rubbing mud on her and shit. But she told this nigga, she was like, "Oh, we gotta go through such and such gaps to get out of here. We're not where we were before. We're in a whole different place." So he's confused. He asking questions and shit. This, that, right? This, that, and the third. Boom. So she started rubbing mud everywhere. Her face, private parts, all that. They like, what the fuck going on? She said, if you don't put this on you in the next few moments, I'm leaving you. Like, I'm gonna get it from around you type shit, right? So they reluctant, but they like, know what the fuck going on, but and they're like, hold on, we finna go take a piss. She was like, she got mad that they said they was finna take a piss. She was like, oh, if you gonna take a piss, if you gonna take a piss, let me know so I could get far away from you. Mind you, that's weird, right? Any person would think that statement right there alone is weird, right? Boom. So they like, oh, what the fuck? Like, they confused, but then she start explaining more. Oh, yeah, it's shit out here that will... Hold on. No, I'm spoiling. Wait, nah, I ain't even get to that part. We ain't even get to that part of the story yet. Boom, so they do that. They get to pushing, right? They walk. She said, you can't run. You have to walk. You can't sweat. If you sweat, they will smell you. It's called squids or whatever. Not squids. Well, yeah, they said watch out for the squids and shit. We gonna get in there. We gonna get to that. But she basically said, oh yeah, you can't sweat, so we're not running type shit, right? You can't piss because that's leaving your scent. You know what I'm saying? And she said something like, what else did she say? Oh, breathing out your mouth. She said breathe in and out of your nose. Do not breathe out your mouth type shit. Because percent. So they pushing this shit, boom. I'm just cut all the way to type shit before where I'm at right now. So they see this dude. Well, she see this dude that she basically knew before, if that makes sense. She knew him before, and she was like, she looked at him. She was like, oh, type. She's like calling out to him, type, right? Oh yeah, I thought you was dead. This, that, and the third. They go up to him. They said this nigga was vomiting. The shit was black. And the shit was coming out his ears. I think out his nose, his mouth, all that. Like that shit, it was just type shit, right? They talking to him and this, that, and like in the third. And his teeth just start chattering. But hella fast. And it was like he was calling for somebody. Y'all know when wolves like when wolves like oh type shit to call they herd? To call they herd, yeah, that's basically what it felt like he was doing. So Shorty instantly, nigga, she running away. Mind you, before she said, yo, we can't run, none of that. But obviously that he's calling for something else that's coming. So boom, they all get to pushing it. They get to this tree. They got this big ass hole in that bitch where all of they could get in that bitch, right? It's hella far from this bitch. Pushing it. Huss, huss, huss. They get in the tree. They in that bed. She start rubbing that shit everywhere again. They start reapplying it like everywhere. Type shit, right? They see this big ass, I can't explain it, but it's basically like a centipede. It's basically like a mammal centipede. Like a centipede, but a mammal. Type shit. He said this shit moved hella fast. Like it circled this nigga 3 times in 6 seconds or 5 seconds or some shit. I forgot what he said, but it was in some seconds. He said before I could even blink. I'm like, oh hell no, right? Then he said it goes to the spot where they were standing when it was over there next to bro. It stops, put his whole head in the ground. It's like it's trying to absorb the particles that's left, right? Put his head to the ground, like you know them fucking. I don't want to say this shit and then do a fucking and do a shit and then I get fucking like, you know what I'm saying? I get clipped. But boom, he basically put his whole face in the ground to like basically smell where they at type shit, right? Cause mind you, that nigga Corey, he's on the ground. That's the name of the nigga that had all the shit coming out his ears and mouth, all that vomiting and shit. Yeah. So basically, he called for that shit to come here. So boom, that shit it curls around it and then its face is in the ground. And then it just stopped moving. Mind you, they watching this shit happen in front of them. They literally they far, but they're not too far as where they can't see it. Bro, this shit, he said he don't know if it's scary seeing the shit move, how fast this shit moved, or it stopped, or his face or his head coming up in their direction, dawg. Fam, he said this shit start pushing it. Huss, huss. Mind you, these niggas got sticks. Remember, these niggas got bang bang. These niggas got stick. He said this shit was moving so fast, it was no point in getting a fight. Is no point in reaching. So he said they sat there and just waited for the best. The shit ran past them. So they sitting there, right? They chilling type shit. Listening to the shit run behind them. Like it didn't know where they was, but it knew the general direction of where it type shit. You get me? Boom. They said they didn't even want to talk because they didn't want to alert this shit. No, none of that. But look, they said this shit, it basically had, how do I explain? It stood up, like it was on the ground. Like imagine like type shit, right? And then you just see that bitch stand up and it's 20 feet and it just start darting towards. Oh hell nah, fam, I can't. Boom, right? So they waited for that bit to be far enough so they could get out that bitch and continue walking. Cause nigga, you can't, if you sweat, that shit's over with, right? Applying mud every 2 to 3 times now. At first it was just 1, 2. Now it's 2 to 3 times. Like every, right? They're trying to be extra cautious with that shit, right? Boom. To the part where I'm at now. So mind you, back then, I forgot to tell y'all this, but she said to get out of this place, I think it was like 2 to 3 gaps. The shit they walked through, all 3 of them, not the hole the niggas, no, not the hole, the gap. She said you gotta go through like 2 to 3 to get out of this place, right? Mind you, they walk in and they find another gap. Mind you, next to the gap It's a little table. Y'all know the little tables. Y'all go to a restaurant, and then when you basically in the front, the little small table, the shit that said, "Oh yeah, wait to be seated," some shit like that. It was a table with that. I think a big ass mace jar and a cup, right? So they got to use this cup basically to fill the jar type shit, right? It's marked where the jar's supposed to be filled up. So boom, they fucking controller about to do it. So basically, they were supposed to fill that. They were supposed to fill the jar up with something. The ooze, the ink from the squid, Corey. It's coming together, right? The ink that was pouring out of him, no ears, nose, all that shit. They have to fill the mace jar up with that same liquid type shit, if that makes sense. So basically, they so the girl was like, oh no, they all right, hold on. They basically was like, oh yeah, we might have to go. They was thinking about going back for him, but the girl, she was like, nah, we ain't going back. She take her bag off. It's like a little drawstring bag. She take that bitch off and take a big ass jar of fucking piss out of her bag and was like, we're gonna bring Corey to us. Right? So she put the jar over there with the piss, put the cup next to it, right? And basically they got rocks, went back until that bitch broke. Once the jar broke, when they finally hit that bitch, fam, it was like, he looked behind him, because before, remember, damn, I wish y'all was watching this shit with me, fam. This is why I'm finna, when I explain this, it's just gonna be playing in the background. I'm gonna be listening to that bit. But he basically said before, like, he had seen something when he first got in here. He saw something in the corner of his eye when they was walking out, like a black liquid spewing out of the, like, shooting out of that out of a tree. Is this a movie? Nah, it's a story. It's like a story time, right? It's on YouTube. But boom. So he said, oh yeah, he saw a black liquid back then. He remembered that liquid, right? He was like, he looked behind him after the jar broke, right? He looked behind him. All the trees had white pairs of eyes in that shit, looking at them. Mind you, he said he looked back. All those trees had little, like, you know, the little type shit, right? I'm finna show y'all if he got it in the background. He don't. But it's just kind of like this. But it's like a circle. Like, you get me? Like a little area to hide in, right? But it was white eyes in, like, damn near every tree. They go to hiding. They get hiding. The shit's come out of nowhere. You know the nigga Corey that we was talking about? With the shit coming out of him and shit? He was in the early stages of whatever the fuck these shits are. Boom. They get running. It's a horde of these shits. They running towards the piss jar that just broke. They go there, right? They over there, they spitting and shit, put the black liquid on top of it like they trying to cover it type shit. This helped them. This helped our main characters, our protagonists type shit, right? It helped him, them, three of them. It helped them to, right? The friend name is Bobby. His name, we just gonna call him Cozy Boy. No, we just gonna call him Dougie. We just gonna Bobby, Dougie, and this random female that they was trying to save, right? They said Bobby, right? He went, like, cause bro? All of them going in there is kind of like too many. You know what I'm saying, bro? Watch out, cause Bobby, that nigga for real. Like, he had experience on the National Guard and shit. Like, we ain't gonna put too much on this nigga Bobby. He like that, twin. Mind you, you know the same situation when back then when it was like put your hands up. You know who said that with a stern ass voice? Bobby, nigga. Put some respect on my nigga B name, fam. Put my nigga, yeah. So boom, Bob the Builder is crazy. So boom, he basically was going back and forth, filling this shit up, and he basically signaled to them, oh yeah, because they couldn't talk and shit, right? Because they ain't. It's a big ass horde of these bitches. So he just going through them like, you know how the Walking Dead the game was when they had to walk through this shit with blood and shit, all of them. Basically the same thing, but type shit. So boom, he get to the last one, right? And you feel the shit. They all go through there, and this is where we at right now.
It started to bind together. And
Hold on.
so if we stayed in it, there was a much less risk
I'm
of them bumping into one of us.
Hold on.
And if all three of us had to weave through every time,
You know what I'm saying? See, what up, Muhammad?
we would raise our chances of them picking up our scent. Bobby seemed up to the task, so we let him do it. And
This is Bobby going to feel the shit.
he was doing phenomenal. He was tiptoeing his way through this squid horde, filling it up a little bit each time. Everything in me wanted to get out of this puddle because, again, we didn't know what this liquid was. But it's not like
He was standing in the black liquid.
there was anything around to wipe it off. So even if I got out of the puddle, I wasn't going to be able to get it off.
And mind y'all, if y'all, I know y'all about to say, oh yeah, let us watch it. Fam, it's just him talking, bro.
So my risk manager calculator.
It's just him talking, and then
was
random
trying to
pictures
stay
he
in.
be
So
putting.
that's what I did.
You know what I'm saying? Random pictures he be putting up type shit. You know what I'm saying? So it's not really, y'all not missing shit.
Finally, after about 10 rounds of Bobby going back,
It was
and
good.
forth, he signaled to us that this one was probably going to be the last one. So Heidi and I stood up, and we were attempting to not slip because it was very difficult. But we managed to get out of it, and we followed him through the horde. All three of us tiptoeing as quiet as possible, and we very quickly realized that it was a
Bobby, I wanna be
fantastic idea
YN.
to only have one person do it, because all three of us
He like
moving
that,
through
that's
this
it.
horde clearly changed the tone. They seemed to be whipping their heads around a little bit more actively and sniffing the air. They knew something was up. It was as if they got a faint scent of us, but they couldn't be sure. More and more of them started sniffing the air, and the chatters of their teeth started to bind together.
The
And
chatter?
all of them doing it
The chatter of the teeth that called that big ass 20-foot shit, yeah.
at the same time.
It's a whole horde of them niggas too. If one nigga could call that shit, what can these do? Mind you, I ain't watched this video yet, but it's like, it's the pieces, fam. It's the, bro, you gotta.
They made this low rumble. We all knew that they were onto us, so it was impossible for us to keep our cool because we knew how close we were. Bobby already had 10 repetitions going back and forth, so he beat us back to the jar by about 30 feet. But Heidi and I were stuck dead center of this horde in the middle of this clearing when all of them collectively were like, something's up, and called out to the big one. They all rattled their
And
teeth
called
in the
out to the
exact
big
way
one.
that Corey did when he called to it. But with this many of them doing it all at the same
He's
time,
pulling
I
up.
felt it in my skull. It felt like the whole forest was vibrating, and fear filled my entire being. Heidi and I both stopped walking for a moment.
Her name
and
is
we both
Heidi.
stopped, and I'm looking
Why you
up towards the gap as Bobby's finishing the mason jar. He's pouring the last couple drips in. It definitely hit that line. And I noticed this slight sheen appear in the middle of this gap. It wasn't glowing or anything, but something slightly changed. I knew something else was there, so it was clear we accomplished this task. We won the game. At least I was pretty sure, because part of me thought my eyes might be vibrating and shaking and making this look different than it actually is. I couldn't tell if the rattling of the squid's teeth was messing with my vision. I was planning on moving when they finally stopped because there was something about the vibration that kind of messed up my equilibrium. But I heard something on top of their rattling vibration, and it was the stampede of the big one closing in on us fast. All of the little squids went silent when the stampede started, and I realized that the source of that sound, the stampede, was coming from beyond the other side of the gap. So where we were headed, it was headed directly back towards us. So we had to beat it to the gap by running towards it. And the first thing that I think is this thing is going to pop out and destroy it. He's going to knock into the mason jar filled with ink, and we're going to have no way out. And we're going to be trapped here. If there's no game to win, the gap's not going to open. So at this point, it did not matter that we were surrounded by these little squids. We had to get through the gap before that big one got here and ruined it.
Fuck you talking
So
about? I
I
would have been
no
pushing
choice
it.
but to
What?
go, run. and it set off a frenzy because they smelt me immediately. So we take off running, slipping almost every step because our shoes are covered in this slippery ink, and we're doing our best weaving through this horde of frenzied squid, with the other one, the big one, barreling towards us in the other direction. So Bobby gets to the gap, Heidi gets to the gap, they're gone, but I still have about 5-10 steps until I'm to the gap, and I could see the big squid barreling towards me only about 20 yards away on the other side, and it's ready to tear me to pieces and turn me into one of its minions. I know for sure it smells me, and it is not going to hesitate. So I dive forward, taking a leap of faith. This thing has already closed the distance, and it's leaping towards me. I close my eyes and I brace for impact, not sure if this thing is going to get to me before I could get through it.
Part 6.
And I hit the ground and I immediately feel this horrible burning sensation all over my body. And I open my eyes expecting to see this massive creature wrapped around me with hundreds, if not thousands, of poisonous spikes causing this pain that I'm feeling. But I'm in a bright, open field with only Heidi and Bobby rolling around in agony next to me. And my entire body feels like it's on fire. The pain was so sudden and so excruciating. It almost felt like getting tased. I felt like I didn't have any control over my bodily function. My body was stiff, my fingers were throwing up gang signs, and my toes were curling, and I couldn't get my jaw to unclench, and I felt my back start spasming. Both of my calves started to cramp, my quads felt like they were becoming knots, and the other two were clearly going through the exact same thing that I was. And I'm waiting for this pain to stop, absolutely paralyzed, but it wouldn't. And I tried to move my hands and my feet, and I was able to slightly. So I roll over to my other side, trying to get a gauge of our surroundings. I just want to see if we're actually safe, and when I'm able to roll over, I see a pond that looks like an absolute oasis. And I knew at this point that the ink was causing this pain, because when I looked down at my arms, the places that had more ink were burning worse. So I knew that I needed to wash this off as soon as possible.
You don't know what the fuck that pond is, though, Dirk.
And squirm my way to this pond, and I just...
You say gang signs? Yes, bro. Yes, bro.
I couldn't care less what was in this pond. I couldn't care if there was a great white shark waiting for me. There could have been a crocodile, a kraken. I still would have rolled my body into that water with how much pain I was in. I couldn't get myself to speak because of the pain, so I didn't know if Heidi and Bobby were following me. But the relief that I felt from being in that water was pure bliss. It didn't just feel like water, it felt like an instant painkiller. It was as if this pond was made to relieve the pain of that squid ink. It felt like absolute ecstasy, rubbing the squid ink and the mud off of me. And very quickly, I realized that Bobby was also following my lead, because he splashed into the pond next to me, and he let out this loud sigh of relief as he started cleaning himself. And me and him were so dirty with ink and mud, we turned this crystal clear water into a cloud of black goop. Well, at least immediately around us looked like there was an oil spill, and we looked like a couple ducks getting cleaned in a Dawn commercial. So I cup a little bit of water to bring it up to my face, and after I'm done scrubbing my face, I dunk my head underwater and I pop my head back out, let the water fall off my face so I can open my eyes, and I look to see if Heidi has made her way to the water. And in that moment, I felt so bad because I was so consumed with relieving my own pain that I didn't realize that whatever was happening was clearly affecting her worse. She was on her stomach, shaking in agony with her hand reached out towards us. Her head was swinging side to side and her mouth was wide open as if she was trying to scream something at us. But all the pain that she was going through was holding her voice in. I basically slapped Bobby in the chest to get his attention, and we both bear crawl out of the pond. We get to Heidi as quickly as we possibly could, and when I grabbed her shirt in an attempt to drag her towards the pond, my hands immediately started to burn again. I wasn't expecting that pain to come back so quickly, because it had taken so long to set in the first time. So when I grabbed her shirt, I immediately started pulling backwards with my legs, but I had to let go once my hands started burning, so I fell onto my butt. And when I stood up to try to make another attempt at dragging her to try to push through the pain, because I wasn't expecting it the first time, she managed to get a couple words out, and in a very raspy tone, completely laced with pain, she managed to say, "No water, you can't go in the water." It was a little bit late for that. Obviously, we were just in there scrubbing ourselves clean, but nothing bad happened to us while we were in there. It was great. right. It completely relieved our pain, but she seemed absolutely dead set on not getting in that water. We asked her what she wanted us to do, but she was still having a hard time speaking. But she managed to roll to her back, take her backpack off, and open her drawstring backpack. And she pulled out this like small little hand towel and started wiping herself with it while it was dry. And then she proceeded to use the grass around us to clean the towel, but it's not like she was actually cleaning it. After she wiped herself like 4 times, this looked like a towel at an auto shop covered in oil. Part of me wanted to drag her into the water against her will so she could see how relieving it was. But she clearly didn't want that. And to be honest, it was very hard watching her sit through this pain. I couldn't imagine having to dry wash myself after that experience. I knew exactly the type of pain she was going through, and to rub it with a dry towel seemed like torture. We sat around her
What's going on, Z?
awkwardly, just attempting to give her moral support as she cleaned herself. It didn't give her the full relief that the water gave us, but it was definitely helping her recover. Eventually, the pain was bearable enough for her to start speaking. Even though she was cleaner, there was still some residual ink left on her skin burning her, but she managed to get these words out. Dr. Doyle told me that no matter how much pain you're in, no matter how much it burns, don't go into the water in Gap 2. And I didn't want to be rude in that situation because I was feeling for her. I could tell that she was still in pain, but I felt like it was about time she gave us a little bit more information on this infamous Dr. Doyle. She made it clear that she didn't know much about this place, but this was the second time she referred to Dr. Doyle. And since his first piece of advice was pretty good about us covering our scent, I felt like it was pretty important for her to start sharing with us the rest of the advice that he had given her. So I tried to demand those answers as
Just in case she down, then what? We grits.
Going on where we are right now. I think we have some time to rest, and I think it's in everybody's best interest if you tell us.
He said, "I
all
would
the
just
tips
end her?
that Dr.
That's
Doyle
crazy."
gave to you. And I'm sure Bobby's as curious as I am to know who Dr. Doyle is and how he knows these tips. I could tell that Heidi didn't want to do a long-winded answer in that moment. I could tell that she just wanted to breathe through the pain that she was experiencing. But I could tell in her face that this was the first time that she felt like she genuinely needed help. So she took a deep breath and she told us this. Dr. Doyle was the man that you saw at the podium. He was also the man that you were fighting with. But he's not a bad man. He prepared me for this. I wasn't upset with him. He was only doing what he had to do. And he's been out here and he's studied this place. And if he told me not to go into the water, I'm not going into the water. Bobby answered her, trying to get more information from her. He excitedly said, "You're telling me Dr. Doyle made it through this and he's made it back?" I didn't feel like that was the most pressing question in that moment, but I was curious. I was more curious about what's so wrong with the water, but Heidi answered Bobby's question because she couldn't read my mind. She said, "He barely made it through, but yes, he did, so I plan on doing everything that he told me to do." He doesn't know every secret of this place. He's pretty confused too, and he doesn't know exactly how he made it back. He was out here alone, and he said that he felt very lucky that he made it all the way through. But he was right about the squid. He was right about Gap 1, so I can only assume he's right about Gap 2, and he's right about the water. That threw another question in my head, and I wanted to blurt it out before Bobby asked his next question.
What is the water finna do?
Anything else that he told you that you think that he's right about that we should know beforehand? Because if we knew to not go in the water an hour ago, I would have listened. And I could see a little bit of guilt on Heidi's face because she knew that I was right. She realized that her frustration with us tagging along, and probably her situation in general, led her to withhold information from us. And that information could have stopped us from doing something that she perceived
Bro, water
as
is
stupid.
healthy.
Because the first piece of advice
Some
that
water.
she gave us was
Some
so
water.
straightforward and so correct about covering our scent. And not going in the water.
So I'll
sounds
make her
pretty
drink it?
straightforward.
You're evil.
That first one
You're
correct.
evil. I feel like Dr. Doyle. I feel like the first, I don't know, bro. I don't know how I feel about this nigga, bro. I don't got no info on this nigga. What y'all think? What y'all think about Dr. Doyle? Let's take an intermission. What y'all think about the Dr. Doyle, bro? What y'all think about Dr. D? D's nuts. My fault. But Dr. Doyle, what we thinking about him? He a weirdo? What we thinking? I feel like, I don't know, bro. I feel like sounds like a mean. Okay.
We would probably assume the second one was correct as well. So Bobby and I probably just royally screwed up because she didn't want to tell us tip number 2. So she proceeded to tell us the rest of the tips that she knew about getting through this. It wasn't much, but something's better than nothing. So she looks around and I could tell she's trying to gather all of them, and she says, "Don't go in the water. rest before the river, nothing's coming for you. And also, guys, by the way, there's one more gap after this one. And the only tip that he gave me for the last gap was, they're not your friends. And he also said that he went through home. I don't know what he meant when he said that, but apparently he went through home. And he told me that that would make sense if I got to the end. So we're like, okay, based on his tips, we knew that this is where we are going to rest and recover before we move forward. And when I looked towards the direction where we were most likely headed, I could see a river in the distance. And only about 50 yards beyond that river was the next clear gap that we had to go through. Like, it was literally right there. We did not have to search for it. And we were no longer in a very dense forest. Now we were in a large open clearing. But it seemed as if we were caged in this clearing by very steep rock walls. And you could slightly see the rock walls through the trees that line the walls. The place almost felt like an arena. You know what it actually felt like? It felt like when you're golfing on a par 6 golf course with the really long holes, like 300-400 yards to get to the hole. And then one of the holes is like a par 3, and you could see the flag from the spot that you tee off. It's like, this feels weird. We've been journeying to each hole 5-6 shots, but now we can just see it. We could pull out the 7-iron and it takes one shot to get on the green. The gap that we were in currently was significantly smaller than the last one, and the task was extremely straightforward. It was very simple. It was clear that we had to cross that river and walk through the next gap. There was no sign or game. The challenge seemed to be this river. So the only things that seemed to be in this makeshift arena was the pond that we washed off in, us, this river, and the next gap. Heidi was clearly done talking and she was still in pain, so she curled up into a ball in an attempt to get some rest before this next challenge. I was planning on doing the same thing, but I couldn't help but to start pacing. And the pacing led me back to the edge of the pond that Bobby and I had washed ourselves in. And what I saw in the water made me call over to Bobby immediately. And he rushed over to see what I was referring to, and I just point at the water and I go, bro, have you ever seen anything like that? He shook his head with a very simple no. Then we both proceeded to watch the ink that we had washed off our bodies into this pond pull together into two very clear clumps of coagulating tar. And these coagulating clumps of tar seemed to be interacting with each other just below the surface of the water. They weren't moving much, but it was clear that they were mirroring each other slightly. And we stood at the edge of this pond watching these seemingly conscious bodies of black liquid until they shot off into the distance of the pond like they were dolphins fleeing. And like I said, the pond wasn't that small. It wasn't massive. We could run around to the other side to see if they went over there, but if they went into the middle of the pond, we would have to go into the water to see what they were doing. We had no idea what the ink had turned into. It left the residual mud behind. It was clear that only the ink had pulled together, and we were not going back into that water to find out. And we figured that the pond and the river weren't connected, so if we don't go back into this water, we wouldn't have to deal with it. We weren't extremely confident in that conclusion.
Big back stuff is crazy. Go get you something to eat, gang. It's cool.
And this might seem absolutely ridiculous, but I had one of the best night's sleeps I've ever had in the middle of that clearing on that soft grass. And like I said before, the water that we washed ourselves in, that pond, felt like pure ecstasy. My body felt like I took an Epsom salt bath with a CBD bath bomb in it, then rubbed Tiger Balm all over myself. My skin felt like it was humming with relaxation and comfort. And during my night's sleep, I felt comforted. I almost felt like a little spoon being cuddled from the back. And to be honest, I woke up absolutely... I wasn't particularly happy about the situation I was in, but I felt good and I felt rested. And I could say the same thing for Bobby, but I definitely could not say the same thing for Heidi. Heidi looked like she had been in and out of sleep the entire night, and her skin clearly started breaking out in rashes and she couldn't stop scratching herself. She was in horrible pain and discomfort, and it felt so unfair that my body felt so good. I felt so ready to move on to the next task, but this girl had suffered all night. And honestly, I even started doubting the tips that Dr. Doyle gave her, because I couldn't imagine how washing off in that miracle water could be a disadvantage. So Bobby and I both get up and we start walking around the area just to make sure that there's nothing in the area threatening. And for some reason, when I finally stood up completely, when I got all the way to my feet and looked around and gazed at the horizon around us, I got this horrible wave of anxiety. I don't even know if I should call it anxiety. If anything, it felt more like a claustrophobic panic. Like, I knew that we were stuck here before. I knew that we weren't in a good situation. But for some reason, standing up in this place and looking around felt like the entire world was closing in on me. So much so that I actually started ducking and covering my eyes so the sun would stop glaring into them so heavily. It felt unnaturally bright, and when I put my right hand up to give myself some shade to keep the sun out of my eyes, it didn't work. There was something about this place that was overly illuminated. It wasn't particularly hot there, but the way the sun was shining felt like Phoenix in the summer. And I felt Bobby lean into me as if he was also feeling these waves of vertigo and panic. And we both basically fell back into Heidi, who was doing her best to hold us up. And it took us a few minutes of good deep.
You know what I'm saying, bro? And y'all now y'all understand why I like watching this shit.
And leaning on
It's
one another to
interesting,
calm
bro.
down. I hadn't felt that way since I had taken a Bang Energy pre-workout on an empty stomach, and it caused severe heart palpitations and rolling panic attacks. But just as I started to gather myself, Bobby looked up into the sky and started freaking out, and he started pointing up towards the sun.
There's
and
two
he's
suns.
saying, "Why are there two? Why are there two?" So I look up and I do my best to use my hands to block out the main source of light because I'm trying to see what he's referring to past the glare of the sun. Part of me thought there was going to be some type of creature flying around above us or swooping down to attack us. But what I saw was far worse. I was looking up at two suns. And let me make this extremely clear. You have woken up every day of your life to one sun. When you look up into the sky during the day, you see our friend, the sun. When you look up into the starry night, you see our friend, the moon. But I'm looking up into the sky and I see two suns, and there's one on each half of the sky, and they're both shining as bright as one another. That's what was causing this intense illumination of the area, and that's why everything felt a little bit off. Like usually you could turn your back to the sun and get a little bit of shade on your face and eyes, and usually when you're looking at somebody and they are turning their head, they're giving you a different angle of their face, you could see shadows on their face depending on what angle the sun is shining. You don't realize how used to shadows you are until you're somewhere that's so illuminated, like you're at a photo shoot surrounded by soft lights. It doesn't feel like real life. It feels like a fever dream. And we all
leftover
instinctively
Raisin
take a couple
Canes.
steps back away from each other.
Fat
looking
ass,
up
bro.
towards the
My
two
fault, my
suns.
fault,
And
my
then we
fault,
look
my
back
fault.
at one another, and I swear, from my point of view, it looked like we were in a cinematic movie. It was too perfect. It looked like we were on set of something. But the weirdest part was the fact that we had two shadows, because there was two suns in the sky. And you never realize how weird that looks because you're so used to the sun being on one side of the sky, and it usually casts a shadow in one direction. But when you see two, it's overwhelmingly disorienting, especially because if there's two suns in the sky,
There's
they're
two
probably
shadows. There's two shadows.
declaring yourself a sovereign. Bro! There shouldn't be a shadow on either side, yet there's two
That's
next
crazy.
to us because of the angle in which each one is shining. And it's like one of those things that once you see
You can't be
you
talking.
can't
Anyways,
unsee.
don't
And
blame
on
me. I
top of the
saved it
fact
for
that
later.
we
I haven't
had
eaten
two
much today.
shadows,
Been working.
how do you
Fam, I could say fat out because I know I eat, fam. Like, you must not know Bobby. Yo.
even have more? The
I had
ink
3.
residue that was still on her skin and her
That's
face
the other
and
2
all
I
of
ate
her
1 hour.
clothes. It looked almost as if it was absorbing all of the light that was coming to
OZ
her.
is
And she looked
crazy.
gray
Hey.
and void of life. And I'm looking at Bobby.
W
and he looks
saying? Nah, he trying to say
illuminated
something
and
else.
illuminated and full of
Z trying to say something else? Shit. What you trying to say, Z? What you mean by that? You know what I'm saying? What you mean by that, gang? Anyways.
color, while Heidi's looking like somebody's draining the joy of life out of her, and she's a black and white character in a color film. It was like she was Spider-Man Noir from the Into the Spider-Verse films. And that's when I really started doubting Dr. Doyle's advice, because even though the illumination was freaky and unsettling, the worst part about it was that it highlighted just how bad of shape Heidi was in. And I was starting to get a little bit concerned that she might start turning into what Corey turned into. That's how gray her skin was looking. And yes, you can attribute that to a bad night's sleep and the rashes and the pain, but you can't pretend like not washing off that ink didn't have major repercussions. And I could tell that Bobby was thinking the same thing, because he was genuinely concerned about her. And she could see it in our faces, the way that she was looking. So she immediately started defending herself. She's like, guys, I know I look bad, but we need to focus on getting through the next gap. If it starts to get worse, I will be honest with you guys. I know what you're thinking. And I had my concerns too, but I promise you, I don't feel as bad as I look. And if you hear my teeth start chattering, I will not be mad at you if you leave me behind. But for right now, I promise I'm okay. This was very reassuring to us because she was very self-aware. She acknowledged our concerns and she agreed that we should probably be concerned. But for the time being, she still felt like a trustworthy, capable part of the team. So we're all standing there with nothing left to do but attempt the next task. So we turn towards the river in the gap and we start walking towards it. And every step that we got closer felt like an inch closer to my impending doom. The river was much wider than I thought it was, and the water was much rougher than I realized. It was very clear that this was a deep, raging river. And if you weren't a strong swimmer, it was very clear that this thing would swallow you whole. So when we get to the edge of the river, I look to both ends to see where it leads. And both ends of this river ran directly into the rock walls that were to my right and left. It looked like if you let this river take you, you would end up into some underground cave river. I highly doubted that it would take you to safety, so that was not an option. It looked like it would just plummet you into darkness, and you would just bash your skull and limbs off of rocks until you finally drown. And then I thought, this must be the water that Dr. Doyle was referring to when he said don't go in it, because this thing was flowing like a glass.
So bring Shorty to the fucking pond! Oh my god.
And this thing was way too wide for us to leap across, and it would be a risk to try to swim it. We would have to build some type of bridge to get across it. So I'm thinking we're about to start gathering branches to throw something together in an attempt like some raft or some bridge. But then Bobby gets the group's attention and he's pointing at something off to the left. And Heidi and I both look over and we see one of those carnival ladders. You know, one of those rigged ladders that you see at carnivals and fairs, or maybe Six Flags. One of those ones that you have to pay.
Yes, I knew I was right. I knew I was right. He's talking about this, by the way. Y'all remember these, bruh? I ain't gonna lie. I think I won this shit before. I don't remember. But if I didn't, I'm going back and I'm finna win that bitch. Watch me.
Falls off. It's like one of the games that's at carnivals. But if you ring the bell at the end, you get a stuffed animal. It looked exactly like one of those. And it was held into the ground on our side by one singular spike. And it was held to the ground on the other side of the river.
Why can't we see? Fam, because it's just him talking. You came in here late, but it's because he's just talking. It's just this the whole time. And he pops up pictures and shit. You know what I'm saying? That's how I said there's two sons. That's how I knew he was going to say two sons, because he has it in the background type shit. You know what I'm saying? Then the pond is right there that he was talking about. The big ass shit that he said looked like it was enclosing him type shit. And his two sons, two shadows type shit. Oh, zesty ass? He's not zesty. Relax, bruh.
Spike. I want to make it clear. It was only held down by one. You need to understand that. But it's not like this ladder was flimsy. It was very taut, it could hold your weight. But if you put too much weight on either side, the ladder would flip. When we walked up to it and we touched it, you could tell it was very tight. It had a little bit of a bounce to it. But if you even slightly lost balance while you were on this thing, it was going to spin and you were getting dumped in the river. So we found it. This must be the game. We need to get across this rigged ladder, and then we could go through the next gap. So Bobby started to brief us on what he thought we should do. The plan was for Heidi to go across first, and we hold the step that's closest to us on our side of the river steady, so she has a better chance to get across. And then one of us would go second, whoever we thought had a lower chance of making it. And the way we would attempt to cross this ladder is to go down into an animal-style bear crawl stance, and when you take a step, you would move your left leg and your right hand at the same time, and then your right leg and left hand at the same time. So you could keep a counterbalance the entire way across.
Smart.
So I asked Bobby, how confident are you that you can get across? And he was pretty confident.
He said, bro, it's the third son. That's so green.
I was also pretty confident that I could get across,
because first,
but I was even more
just look,
confident
he
that
got them
if I
eyelashes
got
that lip.
more than halfway across the
Lip
river
filler?
and I fell in.
Nigga, what? Niggas can't have lips now? Niggas can't have lashes? I got long lashes. Y'all ain't say I look zesty, my nigga. If anything, my shit longer than his. How the fuck he zesty, twin? Okay, wait a minute.
I would still be able to get to the edge because I'm not a crazy strong swimmer, but I feel like I could do it, even if the rapid is crazy.
He's
If the
white.
river
He's
was
not
pretty
supposed to
wide,
have
I
juicy
felt if
lips,
I got halfway
nigga.
across, I'd be okay, but I could.
He's not black. He don't have fat ass lips like this nigga right here. Okay? Bro's mouth was open. Yeah, it was a bad pause. It was a bad pause shit.
Tell that Bobby was genuinely scared of the water and he didn't think he would be. And for me, I felt like I would perform better mentally if I saw both of them on the other side safe. And that way I could fully focus on my balance, because I wouldn't be able to focus if I was thinking about like, he's gonna go after me, I might have to jump into the water after him anyway if he falls in. But if they're both safe, I can just focus on the task at hand. So we decided
Facts, that's what I'm trying to tell him. He's talking about,
last.
bro,
So we held the ladder
not
as steady
juicy
as
lips,
possible, and
fam.
we attempted to coach her as she went
Niggatron
across.
is
We realized pretty quickly that every slight movement caused this thing to
all
shift. There
niggas
was no
roll
easy way
out,
across.
face
And the
out.
smallest mistake, a hand an inch out of place, was going to send you into these rapids. I could tell by the fourth step that Heidi was doing pretty well, but this was even more of a core workout than it was a balancing act, and she was clearly struggling to maintain the bear crawling position. But even when her movements started to get slightly sloppier, she was still making progress. But right as the group's confidence was building, right when she was about 2 steps from the end of the ladder, this girl started to shake like a baby deer on ice skates, and her arms started giving out. Everything was going wrong, and just like that, she capsized and she was in the river.
That bitch so goddamn useless, boy. Not useless. She's been useful this whole time, but like
We all agreed as a unit to not jump in.
you expect, right? You would expect we did all the other shit with flying colors. We just gotta cross a fucking river, bro. Keep balance. Pain is an illusion. And she folded.
Right away if somebody fell in. We gave her 2 or 3 seconds to show us that her head was above water. And when her head broke the surface and she was able to breathe, she didn't look terrified. It was more of a look of surprise. And luckily, she was close to the other end. Even though the river was drifting her at a very high speed, it was clear she was going to make it to the edge, and she did. And she crawled out of the river and she quickly made her way back to the ladder, because now she was going to hold the other end as steady as possible from her side as well. This way, Bobby would have the best chance of getting across, because I would be holding it on my end and Heidi would be holding it on her end. And I kind of like the idea that the ladder was going to be sturdier
just like Mulan, stop
the closer that I
playing.
got to the end, because clearly Heidi started to fatigue towards the end. And if somebody was on the other side waiting for her, keeping it steady, she probably
You got
wouldn't
it,
have fallen.
Twin.
So
You got
Heidi and I
it.
grab both ends and Bobby starts his journey across. He wasn't going super fast, but he was moving confidently. And it didn't look like he was going to fatigue in the same way that Heidi did. But even though it was going well, that same wave of anxiety that I had hit me while Bobby was doing it. And I didn't realize what it was at first. I was internally freaking out, trying to put a finger on what was wrong. And what I realized was, once Bobby reached the end of the ladder and took a step onto the other side of the river, was that from my perspective, Bobby only had one shadow now. And I watched the other shadow wash away into the river as he got to the other side. It was as if once he crossed that line,
He's on the
the
other-
second shadow couldn't come with him. And these rapids were so loud that I couldn't communicate with them what I was concerned about. And frankly, I didn't.
They got closer to the cap. My hypothesis right now. My hypothesis right now. There's a veil right there, like a barrier. They go through it. The sunbeams cannot go through it. The second sun cannot go through the veil. My hypothesis.
Know what I should be concerned about, because losing a second shadow that you shouldn't have should be a relief. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew that it wasn't a good sign. But I had no choice but to start my journey across this ladder. So I put on both of my hands and both of my feet, and I sink my weight as low as I can. And one calculated step at a time, I start making my way across this rapid. And I'm really hoping that then...
Tell me if it's gas. All right, what's up?
Holding it on the other side is going to make the second half of this easier, because this first half was fatiguing every inch of my body, and it definitely didn't help that I was borderline hyperventilating, crippled with fear over the fact that I still had 2 shadows. And even though I was trying desperately to focus on the task at hand, I couldn't help but look off to my left.
You don't have to go to the corner, but I don't want to hear that shit again.
at my shadow. And the reason I was looking at the one to
I don't
my
want
left was
to.
because it looked like it was
I don't want to
slightly
hear that shit
darker
again,
than the one
cuz.
to my right. And even though I was in this situation where I should
I
have
don't
been
want to see that shit.
focused on getting the
All right. Hey, Z, you can come back. You trip.
I couldn't get my mind off
you
the
good,
shadow,
man.
and my lapse of focus
straight,
resulted
man.
in the ladder flipping when I was about 3/4 of the way across. I was anticipating falling in, so I had thought about it. I thought the best thing that you could do is just hang on to the ladder. Like, even if you're in the water, I feel like it's better to hold onto the ladder and just use it as a rope. And I could tell that Heidi attempted to do it as well, but the riptide was too strong for her grip, and she wasn't able to hold on, so she had to rely on swimming. But as I felt the ladder tipping, I let my hands go through the ladder and I wrapped my legs around it like a figure four, and I held the rope and the steps with both hands, just hugging it. And it went through my head when I tipped over. I was like, I should have done this from the start, because even with my back in the water, the riptide wasn't too strong. I was going to be able to army crawl my way to the other side fairly easily. But what I wasn't anticipating was for something to reach around my waist like it was hugging me from the back and attempt to yank me into the river. It felt like two arms grabbing around my waist, trying to pull me into the water. And with the force that it was pulling me down, it brought me a couple inches deeper into the water, which significantly increased the force that the river had on me. I knew I was going to be able to hold on.
My eyes finna start watering. Look at this, bro. Imagine, bro. That same ladder we saw earlier. You're on that bitch, upside down, hugging that bitch. And you finna start crawling. And you just feel arms go like this and try to pull your back. Ah, hell nah, twin.
The ladder.
I'm
There was
instantly.
no way I was going to be able to
I'm about to start
alternate hands and
spamming,
legs
fam.
to move forward.
Spamming.
I was holding on for dear life, and now when waves would pass over me, my face would go underwater, and it would interrupt my breathing significantly. And I tried to look down at my waist to see what had a hold of me, and what I saw was two completely pitch black arms with thumbs and fingers tightly wrapped around my waist. And the source of these arms was coming from the water off to my right. Since I had flipped over, my left had become my right, and that overwhelming sense of dread that I had about my shadow didn't have anything to do with my anxiety. It had to do with my instincts, telling me that I had a predator attached to me since I woke up. The black shadow had turned into a gelatinous cloud of black ink that was now mimicking the shape of my arms and hands, and was attempting to drag me into this rapid and drown me. I was holding onto the ladder for my life, and I was doing—
Y'all remember when the goop earlier in the pond? The pond? Remember that? That's why that nigga said don't go in the water. That's why.
my best to breathe in between the waves of water that were hitting my face. I had to really focus on that, not fighting off the hands. I didn't want to start coughing up water and panicking. Internally, I was hoping that this thing would get tired. And I felt like since I had my arms and my legs wrapped around the ladder, this thing probably wouldn't have the leverage to keep pulling on me.
What if the ladder broke,
I thought there would have to come a point where it would have to try a different tactic. And when it changed its tactic, when it made a different move, when it took pressure off me, that's when I was going to make my move. I only had to get about 5 more feet, and then I would be able to reach Bobby and Heidi's hands. They were already reaching over the water, signaling to me that I just had to get close, and they would be able to drag me out. So I'm hanging there, waiting for my opportunity with my cheekbone pressed against the step of the ladder. And I'm focusing on staying as sturdy as possible while maintaining as much of my stamina as possible. And in that moment of pure survival focus, I'm staring at the step that's pressed against my cheekbone. And I see this engraving on the step of the ladder. It was one of those moments that felt like it lasted an eternity, because you're borderline dissociating from the pain and fatigue that you're feeling in your limbs. So you catch yourself hyper fixating on details that you would never notice. And the engravings on this step had 3 numbers on it. 383. I didn't know what it meant, and honestly, I didn't really care what it meant, but it was something for me to lock my eyes onto and focus. So those 3 numbers were just stuck into my head. 383. And as I was holding myself there, surviving, I realized that I was right. This thing did not have unlimited stamina, and I had way better leverage than it did. I was sure in that moment that if I fell into the water, I would not stand a chance. And that was based on the force that it was able to generate with 0 leverage. But eventually I could feel the force of its pull becoming weaker, and I could sense that it was just about to try something different. And what it did was, it attempted to target my legs. It attempted to peel my feet out of their figure 4 position around the ladder, which was a smart move.
This is Cassie. She never really paid attention to her credit scores until she got credit karma. And
move because that's definitely where most of my leverage was coming from. But the mistake that it made was the fact that I was crunched into a little ball. So when it
He said there's
focused on my
no way I'm
legs,
gonna get
I
out
was
that
able to
bit alive.
My arms about 3
I'm
steps
surviving.
further. And once my arms were
I
reached
play
above
horror
my head,
games. I'm
3 steps
surviving.
further, and I had a firm
I'm
grip
surviving
on the
off
ladder. I eased
rip.
up on the grip that my legs had for a
I play horror
fraction of a
games.
second.
I watch
And
horror
yanked
movies. I
myself
watch
back
scary
up into a
gameplays.
ball.
I watch
But I was 3
this.
steps further. I basically did like a
I'm
pump.
fine.
Like imagine how a caterpillar walks, how it scrunches up, then extends, and scrunches up and extends. That's what I did to this thing. I didn't let go of any of the leverage that I had. I just slowly shimmied up like a caterpillar until Bobby and Heidi were able to reach me. I would stay in a full defensive position while it still had a grasp on me. But when it tried something different and I wouldn't feel it tugging, I would extend, then I would bend. In that moment that it
They
didn't
were
happen,
getting into
and
this
I would
shit
be
in the
closer
first-
to the edge, closer to safety. And it finally got fed up with me.
Real shit.
And when I got to
Real
my
shit.
last
Real nigga
extension,
shit.
it wrapped its limbs around my face and pulled my head completely underwater. It grabbed me from my forehead and my chin, so it had a very good leverage point to extend me backwards. No matter how much I tried to tuck my chin, it was still able to pull it back. And this is when panic set in for me because I knew I was close to Bobby and Heidi on the other side, but I didn't know how close. And my head was underwater and my nose was filling with water. And my arms and legs were fatigued. And I thought I was finished when I felt a second set of hands grab my shoulders. And I remember thinking, if Bobby's shadow came back and there's 2 of these things, I might as well let go right now because I don't stand a chance. I don't have enough energy left. Because this second set of hands felt so much stronger than the first set, and they immediately pulled me off this ladder. I did not stand a chance.
Shit. Part 8. Slapping
But
that
these
bit with a
hands didn't drag me
tortilla.
to
Don't
the
play
bottom of
that.
the
Don't
grapple.
play that.
They were
thing.
Bobby's
Can't
hands.
get
They
the
dragged me
Hispanic.
ashore.
What?
And once my head and
I'll use
torso
a
were out of the
belt.
water,
I'm
I
gonna get that
watched
thing
the
a
shadow
low
make
taper
its last
fade.
effort trying to drag me back in. And when it missed and I was out of its range, I watched it surrender and drift down the river. I was completely exhausted and coughing up water, but we had no time to sit here. We needed to start discussing our game plan. I did my best to try to gather myself as quickly as possible, and I didn't want to let the others know how genuinely tired I was. There's nothing quite like the fatigue of getting caught in rapid waters or riptides. It's not like I was swimming against it, but doing an isometric hold against the power of a river for minutes at a time was like running a marathon. I felt like a noodle. And I don't know what else to say to the group to break the silence, so I just go, what was that? And I asked that, even though I knew what it was. I knew that that thing was the ink that I had washed off in the pond the day before, because I remember how it gathered together under the surface of the water and shot off. And somehow that ink had made its way out of the pond and disguised itself as Bobby and I's shadows while we were sleeping.
The 2 shadows! Bro, the 2 shadows! They used the 2 suns. That is so fucking crazy, bro. One wrong move in a situation, you're grits. Fam, that's why he said don't wash the shit off. If you wash it off, it's gonna make it 10 times worse. She still had the shit on her. I got big news that happened a few days ago. What's up? Bruh. Dr. Doyle, boy, you got some explaining to do. You got some explaining to do, boy. Cause how did you know? How? You said you was there alone. How did you know not to get in a pond? Like how? You gotta do some shit wrong for you to know some information like that. Unless you was there with somebody else, but he clearly said he was alone. So he said he got out there lucky though. He did get.
Waited
Fair
until
play.
we were in
Fair
the
play.
rapids to attempt to drown us.
I got a
Bobby clearly said in that
Yamaha
moment,
one still
she
haven't
did tell us
used it
not to go in the
for.
water, gesturing towards Heidi. And this was the first time that I looked at Heidi since I'd been out of the water. And the first thing that I noticed is that she didn't look horrible anymore. She looked full of color and fully rejuvenated. She had fallen into the river, and the river washed off all the ink that was still on her. So I asked her, what happened when you went in the water? Because you still had ink on you. And she said that the water felt amazing and it felt like it was instantly healing her and nothing tried to pull her in. And she said it was so rejuvenating, it gave her the energy to swim to the side. And she said she felt like she was 100% recovered.
That's the same fucking way they felt when they woke up and found out there was 2 suns in the air. Mind you, don't get in a pond because you might need it later for the river. They knew you were going to get fatigued or tired when you go across it. If you have ink on you, it was, bro, this shit's, I'm telling you, wrong move.
When she got out of the water, when she was a complete
Butterfly
mess,
fit.
when she even got on the ladder, this tickled my brain in a very weird way because it hit me that this wasn't just any task or challenge. This one was more like a test. It wasn't like a quiz. It was more like an instant gratification test. It's like it knew we would be covered in ink when we got to the second gap, and the ink felt like it was set on fire the moment we got there. And this gap presented a beautiful...
And they put them right next to the pond on purpose.
oasis of immediate gratification. But if you indulge in that immediate gratification...
like a sin, it come back to bite you.
and relief, it then comes back to punish you. But if you waited it out and you fought through the pain until the second body of water...
like a grind.
it rewarded you even if you failed the task and fell in the river. It was like this sick lesson about instant gratification versus delayed gratification. And it made me realize that this place was much more complex than it seemed on the surface. Because even though the way that I just worded that about instant gratification versus delayed gratification, it's a good lesson in general, but the way that it was presented was sadistic. This place basically said, I'm gonna torture you, I'm gonna put you into excruciating pain, then I'm gonna present you a solution, and
see if you
take
use
the
it,
solution,
I'ma
gonna
still punish you
for it.
again.
Heidi broke my internal dialogue about the lessons that this place was teaching me by saying that we should probably get moving. And she tried to up the morale of the group by reminding us that this is the last gap that we're entering. And she also reminded us that
they're not your friends. Remember the last gate, the last gap. They're not your friends. My fault. No, because this shit's so lit. Wait, my fault. Wait. I mean, I got news, but not big. They look cool as fuck. Let's hear the news. Me and my girl broke up. Damn. Boyfriend broke up with me before, so it's alright though. I don't care. Seeing for real, next week would be my last court date. Can't wait. All you need is yourself for real. For real though. I got myself. See, bro, like, bro, it's just shit like that, bro. Like, I love just reading shit like that, bro. It's like, I know if I'm not there, somebody's gonna be there for you. I love that, bro. Like, I love the camaraderie. I love the people, bro. I love my people, bro. You know what I'm saying?
that Dr. Doyle gave her about it. She said, keep this in mind, guys. I don't know what this means, but you need to remember, they are not your friends. That wasn't much to go on, but Dr. Doyle was 2 for 2 when it came to tips. And even though I was having my doubts about it before we crossed that river, now I knew that if Dr. Doyle said it, you live by it. So I bring myself to my feet and I asked Bobby if he's okay. I gotta check in with my boy. He wasn't, but he told me he was, and I lied right back to his face.
I love y'all,
we
bro.
both lied
Love
to Heidi,
y'all,
and
bro.
Heidi lied to us. And 3 people
He's done, he
collectively
going on my
the worst day
soul.
of their
Hey,
lives
do what you gotta
pretended to be okay. And in
do.
a single
Protect
file
your
line, we
energy.
walked through
Protect
another
your time.
unnatural gap
Protect
in
your
an
patience.
assortment of
Protect your,
branches that shouldn't have been there. So I squint and I brace
know,
for pain, or at least for
protect
something
your heart,
similar
protect
to the
everything,
last gap that we
fam.
went through. But I felt
what
nothing.
I'm saying,
This is
bruh?
the 3rd one that we went through, and when I passed through it, I saw nothing. It was like the lights went out, and the only thing that stopped me from freaking out was when I reached forward, Bobby was still there, and we both immediately whispered to Heidi, who was also still there. And I heard Bobby's hand touch her shoulder because he reached forward frantically, almost slapped her. But I knew that all three of us were still there. But there was no telling where we were. Like, I'm telling you, we were in the pitch black and we stopped moving immediately because we couldn't see a thing. But from the few steps that we took, I could tell that we were still outside. And I could tell we were still in some type of forest just based off my feet crunching on the ground. The sound of the raging river behind us completely disappeared. But we weren't sure if we had to keep walking. Like, this was some type of middle ground. Like, maybe this gap is longer than the last two. But we all shuffled together for a couple more minutes. And we realized that this might just be the third gap. This might be the third task. And we have to find the last gap in pitch black darkness. I heard Heidi squeal, and initially I thought it might have been because something touched her, or she might have heard something.
Man, fuck that piece of shit.
Thought something was
Fuck that piece of shit, twin.
It was actually a squeal.
Twin, fuck that piece of shit, twin. You could get big, you could get badder shit, twin. You could get handsomer, you could get more fine shit, twin. You know what I'm saying? All of y'all are beautiful. All of y'all are pretty. All of y'all are handsome. You know what I'm saying? If you ain't hear that until now, you're gonna hear it every day. You're beautiful. Okay? You're beautiful. Love y'all. You know what I'm saying? I love y'all, right? Y'all put me in good spirits, fam.
Excitement, because she remembered something that she had packed in her goodie bag. She always had something good. And I heard her lift the bag open, and I heard her reach inside of it, and then I heard a flicker of a light, and it took a couple flicks, but it eventually turned on. And I'm expecting to see the illuminated faces of my friends to give me some comfort.
I see.
Similar way, how
Me personally, me and my niece would have whooped that nigga ass. Hey, I would have had that boy hemmed up. Hey, niece. Yeah, hit his ass real quick. Hit it. Right, and you better not hit her too. And you better not, look, I'm gonna be talking to her the whole time. You better not hit him too. You better not hit her either. Hit him. Watch, man, I'm gonna make that boy like a fool, fam. I'm telling you. And let him put his hands on my niece. You already hammed up like this, twin. You already hammed up. What if I just unravel, push your ass, just knock your ass out, nigga? All right, let me see that.
Absorbing sunlight while she still had that black ink on her in the last gap. It seemed like the blackness of wherever we were was absorbing the light that was coming off the flame. We were able to see the flame itself, but no matter how close the flame got to one of our faces or one of our hands or to a tree that we could all feel, it wasn't illuminating anything around it. It looked like a floating flame in an abyss of darkness. So even though it was a great idea, it didn't do us any good. It was useless. We decided to just put it away because it wasn't giving us any light to navigate. We thought maybe it's more of a liability to have it on because maybe
something's in there waiting for you because they know you're gonna go through the gap. What if it's waiting for you to turn that light on? Because that's what what's the first thing a person thinks when they're in a dark place? Flip a light on, right? What did they just do? Flip a light on, right? They're smart though, because they see that it wasn't illuminating nothing. They turned that bitch off. They cut that bitch off. I already did beat his ass real bad. He pulled up and I didn't play. She was inside my crib over with my friend, filmed it, but I don't have the vid. I gotta ask her. He said, and what's that last one, Z? What's that last one, Z? He said rainbow one and then and a what's that? What's the last one, Z? He about to be dead, old type shit.
Something here that will be looking for something like that. We
Real as
have
fuck,
no
Z.
idea what this challenge is going to be. The only thing that we know is that they're not our friends. And I thought we were walking slowly in the first gap and trying to not build up a sweat, but there's no slower type of walking than walking blind. We were moving at a snail's pace, and that pace slowed down even further when the whispers started. I wasn't sure if it was the wind at first, and I also wasn't sure if I was the only one hearing it. When the first one blew past my ear, I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to brush it off. Like, I didn't hear that. I wanted to think that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I was just scared. But as the second whisper blew past me, I knew it wasn't a coincidence because I recognized the voice.
Ain't gonna lie. Whisper in my ear if you want to. You gonna get it. You gonna get it. Alright.
My
Alright.
mother was speaking.
I'm
to me and
swinging
guiding
in
me,
the air.
and she
I don't
said,
care.
like,
I'm gonna look
"You're
like a
looking for
crackhead.
is to your left." And the first thing that I thought was,
Bro, I don't
no
care,
chance
bro.
I'm going left. Because Dr. Doyle said they're not our friends.
Mhm.
It didn't matter whose voice flew past my ear. I wasn't making any decisions without the entire group's approval. And soon after the first whisper that hit me, I could tell Bobby heard his first whisper. But he heard his wife's voice because he immediately said her name. And the tone of his voice was that of a concerned husband. And he frantically started saying, "She's telling me to go right. Guys, we need to go right." And Heidi said exactly what I was thinking. "Bobby, they're not your friends." And Bobby pushes back. He goes, "We're not talking about a friend. We're talking about my wife." And Heidi repeated herself very
not-
sternly.
Nigga, did you come here with your fucking wife? Bro, I would have punched this nigga dead in his shit, bro. Are you slow? Like,
"Not your friends." And as we continue
you supposed
walk,
to be the smartest one here, fam. Like, you supposed to be the most level-headed one here, and you talking about a fucking wife you didn't even bring, dog. You went through all these gaps, and it took you through different places. You're in a dark place. Y'all turned on the light, couldn't see shit, so you turned it off. You're hearing whispers, and you think it's your fucking wife. Oh yeah. They just know how to mimic your wife's voice type shit, and you just go along with it. Oh, she's just in the dark. Oh yeah, baby, let's go to the right in the dark. No, nigga.
different voices came flowing by in the wind. My sisters, my wives, my childhood friends, and they were all convincing me to walk in different directions. And there was one voice that stood out, and it made me question Dr. Doyle's advice again, because this was the voice of a devil or a demon, or something sinister that definitely didn't have good intentions. It was deep, it was aggressive, it was menacing, it was threatening, and it was whispering to me to go straight. That one definitely wasn't my friend, and I felt the other two flinch when they first heard that voice, very similar to how I flinched when I first heard it. It was jarring. We were going straight the whole time. We had to weave around a tree here and there, but primarily, we went straight this entire time through every gap, so we continued to do that. Up until this point, that's all we've
Bro,
done, and it's worked so far, so why would we change that now? But as we continued to walk straight, that horrible, menacing voice continued to encourage us, and it was saying things like, very good, don't listen to them, listen to me. We were going so slowly that it didn't feel like we needed to stop to talk, but we stopped when that thing said, that's right, continue walking towards your friend. And that's exactly what Dr. Doyle said not to do.
and I would have turned around and went the other way. You in a different fucking place. You're in a different place. The gap behind you clearly fucking closed. You can't see. There's no light, bro. Niggas don't fucking think, bro.
And this thing just referred to itself as our friend. And at that very same moment, we all saw a dull light in the distance. It was slightly off to our left, but we could continue to go straight, and we would still be able to pass it. We would be able to investigate it, but we wouldn't have to go off course. So we continued to walk, and we continued to ignore the whispers from our friends and our loved ones. But they started to escalate to pleads and begging and lies and insults, anything to get our attention. And when we got closer to this light, and I could see what was inside of the light, what was being illuminated in this pitch black darkness, I started to freak out. It was my mom sitting on a small chair in front of a coffee table that had a candle on it. And for some reason, this candle illuminated the area. Our fire didn't work, but hers did. And for some reason, my mom is speaking out into the darkness, and I'm able to hear her voice as a whisper, and the whispers that I'm hearing match how her mouth is moving. But she stopped saying to walk to the left. She started to tell me that she came out here looking for me. She said that I had went missing and she was worried, so she went to where I was going and she saw a hole in the trees. And she said that she walked through it, and then she started to cry, and she said that she's been here since she walked through it and she doesn't know where she is.
Are you fucking serious right now, bro? But are you dead serious right now? Oh yeah, I just came here. You were lost. You're a grown ass man. Your old ass mom's not coming out there, nigga. Not coming out there. And on top of that, you talking about she's speaking up. And you're hearing it as a fucking whisper. That should already tell you it's not her.
and that she's scared. And she's calling out to me to help her. She says she can't see anything.
Help me with
And
a
all she
fucking
needs is
candle in
help.
my
She
hand,
wants
right?
me to-
If your mom said, look, if you in the middle of nowhere and you see your mom with a candle in her hand like this, talking about, help me, and you know you ain't bring her there, you know she at the crib, you know she wouldn't come out here for you, like you know she wouldn't come out here, what are you doing, gang? Imposter.
come over to save her when she said that she had
Save
also
you from what? We're in the same predicament.
seen the circle in the trees and that she had come to save me and look for me. My heart completely broke. Just the thought of my mother wandering through the same thing that we had walked through, but finding herself in this intense darkness.
To be real, if your mom did go through that circle, she would have to go through the same shit you did. She didn't have nobody to navigate her through this. Let's watch. Let's watch the
And
video.
not knowing what else
I feel
to do
like
with
I am Dante. I feel like I'm Dante because I keep pausing this shit. Not the white lady. Why is she not black? Because he's not black. We'll be saying, why are you here? No, my mom wouldn't even be here. Type shit. My mom wouldn't even be. Fuck that. I wouldn't even be here. Like,
in front of this candle. My instincts almost took over and I almost ran over to her to grab her and tell her she's going to be okay and add her to our pack.
that's how much you want to bet he finna say that's the devil that was just talking to us and telling us to go straight. How much you want to bet? How much you want to bet?
And she's going to come out with us. We're going to
This
get out
turns
of this
to a demon
together.
voice,
But
watch.
Heidi grabbed my shirt and sternly said, "They are not your friends." And immediately after she said that to me, the horrible, menacing voice whispered in my ear again, and it said, "Do what you're told and walk straight." Nothing in me wanted to listen to that voice, but we continued to walk. And once I got some distance from my mother, who was sitting in this dark abyss, I looked back at her and she had her head leaning back, and she was swaying side to side, leaning back, smiling as if she was completely comfortable and content with where she was. Her body language did not match the words that she was whispering to me, so I knew it wasn't her. I
Thank
didn't
you.
leave my real
Thank
mom.
you, Dougie.
And I knew at that
Thank you,
moment,
Dougie.
it didn't matter who we passed. It didn't matter who we saw here. Nothing was going to take us off course. We were just going to move forward. Because if I was willing to walk past my mother, they had to be willing to walk past anybody. And we walked past dozens of people. We walked past some people that I recognized, people that were attached to me, but then we walked past other people that I knew were attached to the others. Some of my favorite people in the world, sitting in total darkness, whispering into the wind, trying to convince us to get off course. And even though it felt like we shouldn't be interacting with these people because they're not our friends, our North Star, this demon
Wait, what
voice,
happened?
felt like an even worse thing to listen to. And as we continue to walk, the whispers start
What?
flooding in more frequently and more
Hey,
aggressive.
who's Shakira? What's up, Shakira? I ain't even see you pop there. Twin, my fault. My mom would never be there. Exactly. We okay in here? Yeah, we just walk. You know what I'm saying? We just listening to a little story time. You know what I'm saying? Okay, just making sure. Yeah, we good. You trying to stay? Yeah. Hold on, Z. Do your thing. I'm gonna pop out the snacks. Hey, you should for real though. I finished my food.
To the point where we couldn't even communicate with each other. We couldn't hear each other. I couldn't hear anything outside of the whirlwind of all of the people in my life pleading with me to go a different direction, followed by a low, horrifying, raspy voice telling me to stay on course. Good boy, move forward. And once the voices
Good
knew
boy.
that we were not going to listen to them,
I probably would have died because I would have been like, "Good boy, you're stupid," and I would have started walking. You know what I'm saying? But that's just me
the
though.
things that would start to appear, the things that would be illuminated in the darkness, instead of
said,
somebody
"Not
just
the wink,
sitting on
Remy?"
a chair, they became much more violent, much more gruesome. They weren't violent towards us. They were violent towards
Cookies are
each
in the
other.
oven and
whatever
wings
these
and
things
fries
were,
are on
they
the
were
way?
trying to
Oh, yeah.
convince us that one of our
That's a what we call that, folks. I'm gonna let y'all type it out. What we call? Actually, nah, y'all won't even gonna say it. Oh hell no, I'm done listening to the story. I'm so done with people saying good boy.
loved ones were in real danger. They were acting out horrible scenes in groups together, but they were switching out which one was the victim. They were attempting to get one of us to spring into action to try to save the person that they were mutilating. But every time we walked past one of these graphic scenes, Heidi repeated herself. They are not your friends. And we had to tune out the sounds of our loved ones screaming, their bones cracking, their flesh tearing. And right after Heidi would scream it, "They're not your friends," the voice would back her up, making it feel like avoiding these things was the wrong decision every time. Until in the distance, we could see three.
No, He said, keep going straight. He's trying to trick them into going somewhere else. I would have died. Fuck. Let me look up what that. Wait, what? Let me look up what that. What? If I hear one more, I'm slapping the head out of them. You have to wait. They're not done yet.
Gaps directly ahead of us, and each gap was illuminated in a very similar way to how our loved ones were illuminated, and they were all lined up next to each other as if they were presented to us as a choice. And next to each gap was another one of those signs that we couldn't tell what it said until we got all the way up in front of them. So here we are, still not able to see each other, still only able to feel each other's garments in our hands because we're tightly squeezing as close as we can to each other, and we're presented with a choice of 3 gaps that were completely identical and identical to the ones that we had passed through previously. And from left to right, they're labeled home, hell, village. And Bobby immediately broke the silence by saying, we need to talk this through before we choose one. And I could see that all 3 gaps were already open, like we passed this task. The game here was to choose which one, because I could see the slight sheen of light in the middle of each one of them. And Heidi reminded us in that moment that Dr. Doyle told her that he had went through home. And Dr. Doyle was still alive. He made it out. So obviously in my head, we're going to choose the one that's labeled home. But Heidi is like, no, we have to go through the one that says the village. Because if he went through home and it brought him back to the village, then if we go through the village, it should actually take us home. But for Bobby and I, going back to the village was pretty much us going back home. We wanted to go where we came from. Like, it's not like this gap is going to drop me in front of my house. The most convenient thing for us is to go back to the village. But Heidi reluctantly pleaded to us that we didn't understand what this place was yet. And she's telling us that she can't go back to the village. But the voice that we've been hearing this whole time, that demonic voice, spoke over her by saying, go through hell. So here's the predicament. This terrifying voice has been telling us to go in the correct direction this entire time. So why would it start lying now? But it's very possible that it was trying to build trust with us all the way through so it could lie now. And we would listen to it and go through hell. And in this situation, I firmly believe Dr. Doyle's rule. They are not your friends. It doesn't matter if this voice was pointing us in the right direction. Nothing out here is our friend. That's why he said the statement broadly. He didn't say
19. I'm about to be 18 in June. I ain't gonna lie. I could wait, but I can't wait.
Not your friends.
You know what I'm saying?
Everything in here is not your friend, and you cannot trust it. And I expressed that thought to Bobby and Heidi, and they agreed with my logic. As twisted and upside down as this place was, it still didn't feel like the right choice to go through the hell gap. And if Dr. Doyle went through the home gap and it brought him back to the village, that's the one that Bobby and I were going through. Because we knew for sure that it got him somewhere safe. And even if Heidi disagreed with us, at this point, we were willing to split up. Like, we helped each other. We got through this. If the village gap took her home, that would be fantastic. But Bobby and I were not willing to go through an untested gap. And as we're all talking, it's as if the voice was listening, and it reassured us that we were all allowed to choose whichever one we wanted. We could all go through different ones. For a moment, it felt like it might have been
split them up.
But then I felt like it was this voice's last-ditch effort to try to get at least one person to go through the hell gap, because we were leaning towards the 2 that were at the hell gap. Heidi made it extremely clear that she was going to go through the village gap in an attempt to go home. And we told her that that was okay. And she gave us her blessing for us to go through the home gap to go back to the village. And we let go of our grips from each other for the first time since we entered this 3rd gap. We said our goodbyes without even being able to see each other's faces. She walked through her gap, and Bobby and I walked through ours. And exactly what Dr. Doyle said it was going to be, we re-entered the village. We walked right back through the gap that we initially came through. We were safe, we were totally okay, and we weren't left wondering where Heidi ended up, because she was right in front of us, back in the village, with pure terror on her face. We were happy to be back. She was devastated. The home gap and the village gap brought us back to the village, so she might have needed to go through hell to go home. But now here she was, back in a village filled with people who were physically abusing her when we found her. And all of the people of the village are coming out of the woodwork with shock on their faces that all 3 of us had returned. And I lock eyes with Dr. Doyle, and I have some questions for him.
First episode, how y'all feeling? How y'all feeling? I ain't gonna lie. Excellent storytelling, bro. excellent storytelling by Dougie Corridor. Shout out Dougie fam. Shout out Cozy Boy. Shout out Chop Chop Storytime. Shout out Chop Chop Story Boy. You know what I'm saying? Those are all his different names type shit. You know what I'm saying? I might be just fanboying or some shit. I don't know. I fought with his shit, bruh. I ain't gonna lie. Hold on.
Popped up that was uniquely evil. Every village member had to agree and choose one village member to completely.
All right, second part.
What would you do if you took your favorite hike on a familiar path, but this time you came across a strange, hidden village that you'd never noticed before? And what if this village is filled with a diverse group of people that look desperate and out of place? And what if when you tried to help them, they spoke to you like they felt sorry for you? Would you trust them? When we had initially found this village, we knew that something was off. The entrance was a bizarre anomaly in the tree line, and the people inside looked worn down and stressed out. I could see it in their face. They looked desperate and out of touch with reality. But Bobby and I were forced to confront them when we caught what they were doing to Heidi. But instead of saving...
He's recapping the first thing. If y'all want to hear how the first thing happened when I explained it, here we go.
Heidi, we too became victims to their odd ritual. And this ritual was filled with games and tests. We easily could have died if it wasn't for the tips given to Heidi about these games. From a man named Dr. Doyle. We beat the final test and we arrived back in this weird village. And we were standing there face to face with the man that not only gave us those life-saving tips, but was also the ringleader of this village and had forced us into these sick games in the first place.
Wait, what?
So I'm standing in this freaky village for the second time in 24 hours, and I'm looking into the eyes of the...
Fuck. Uzi. F-Uzi. You green as fuck. Freak. Damn. Oh, that wasn't even Z. It was fucking Benet. And Z agreeing. Bro just went off for a second. Yeah, you should meet the rest of us. I didn't see shit for a second. Probably because I was changing the video. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? You know, I didn't see shit for. Oh, they even worse. I don't count. I just start stuff with Remy and Jay. You should come see us on other lives, bro. I'm waiting on this food taking long. Like, hurry up.
Man that did this to us. Bobby and I start to march up to this guy to confront him. And this guy has his palms up in an attempt to calm us down, but it wasn't going to help.
Who are you?
And now all the other villagers are circling around us as if we're about to have an old school schoolyard fight. Dr. Doyle has no idea that I'm undefeated at recess, and he's about to get the verbal whooping of a lifetime. Not to mention, if he says anything even remotely slick, I'm gonna Batista bomb him through a table. Or at the very least, put him in a full Nelson like the good old days. But as I'm closing the distance on him, with my right finger pointing directly at his face, but as I'm getting ready to blurt out my...
They canceled your shit, twin! No!
And it feels like somebody grabbed my right shoulder. And the reason it threw me off balance was because it was the same arm that I was pointing with, and it was the same leg I was stepping with. So the perfectly timed tug on my right shoulder forced me to bend at my waist slightly, bringing my ear down a couple inches, so somebody shorter than me could whisper in. And I also felt at the same time to calm us down, but it wasn't going to help.
Bro, a rat? Same thing happened to me before I pulled up.
And now all the other villagers are circling around us as if we're about to have an old school schoolyard fight. Dr. Doyle has no idea that I'm undefeated at recess, and he's about to...
Oh, I look so fucking stupid doing that shit. I hope none of y'all niggas copied that. Like, I hope none of y'all niggas caught that shit on camera, bro.
The blade of a woman's hand resting on my cheek as if she was getting ready to tell me a secret. She was leaning her body into my side, and she began to delicately
I'm glad it's already
All
over.
she said was, "My vote is with you. Whoever you want, just tell me." And then she slid her right hand that was covering her mouth down to my bicep, and she took her left hand that was cupping my shoulder down to my tricep, and she gave my arm a light squeeze followed by a light caressing. And it had taken me so off guard because I was...
Wait a minute. I'm confused right now. Wait a minute.
Not to mention, if he says anything even remotely slick, I'm gonna Batista bomb him through a table. Or at the very least, put him in a full Nelson like the good old days. But as I'm closing the distance on him with my right finger pointing directly at his face, but as I'm getting ready to blurt out my first question towards him, I get taken slightly off balance, and it feels like somebody grabbed my right shoulder. And the reason it threw me off balance was because it was the same arm that I was pointing with, and it was the same leg I was stepping with. So the perfectly timed tug on my right shoulder forced me to bend at my waist slightly, bringing my ear down a couple inches so somebody shorter than me could whisper in it. And I also felt at the same time the blade of a woman's hand resting on my cheek as if she was getting ready to tell me a secret. She was leaning her body weight into my side, and she began to delicately whisper. All she said was, "My vote is with you. Whoever you want, just tell me." And then she slid her right hand that was covering her mouth down to my bicep, and she took her left hand that was cupping my shoulder down to my tricep, and she gave my arm a light squeeze followed by a light caressing. And it had taken me so off guard because I was gearing up for an altercation. I was ready to start shouting at Dr. Doyle, and this woman just floated into frame.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I gotta stop doing them outbursts, bro.
To deliver that one line to me and only me. It felt so out of place in this situation, and it made no sense to me why she would do something like that. And the odd flirtation of it was also jarring. Not to mention the look in her eyes when I turned towards her was salacious and borderline scandalous. It was as if she was expecting a negative repercussion from what she had just did, but she enjoyed stirring the pot. So I turned to Bobby to see what his reaction is to what just happened to me, but I see that he's looking in the opposite direction, and I realize that the same thing had just happened to him, but his woman was much more recognizable to me. She was the one that Heidi was aiming most of her animosity towards when we had first entered through the hole in the trees. So these two girls that just whispered into Bobby and I's ears were clearly the root of the drama of this place, and they were absolutely shameless about it. The tension in the area was palpable, and I could see all of the villagers that had surrounded us knew that it was about to boil over because of what they had just done. I could tell they were waiting for our next move because they didn't know if it was going to boil over between us and Dr. Doyle or something about these two women that had just whispered to us. And before I was able to lead the charge and be the one that erupted this altercation, Heidi jumped in and started barking at these two girls. She aggressively said, "Do you two ever stop playing? It's literally their first day, Blake." And she said that first sentence to the girl that whispered into Bobby's ear. So this girl, clearly named Blake, was clearly Heidi's arch nemesis. And then Heidi turned her attention towards the girl that whispered in my ear, and she said, "Don't let her manipulate you, Serena. Have some empathy for these guys." Heidi was gesturing towards Bobby and I when
I don't see no Glocks or Gucci. Why you went? Why you went straight to a Glock, fam? Is that stereotyping? Is that stereotyping? Is that stereotyping? Yeah, I know that's my weakness, right? Stereotype. Like, bro, fam.
Said these guys, but I wasn't sure why she was encouraging them to show us empathy. But before I figured out why she would do that, this girl Blake clapped back at Heidi in such a snarky tone. Her body language and tone of voice was reminiscent of a high school
112
in the early 2000s. And this girl goes, "Hey Heidi, did you ever stop talking to Corey when I asked you to?" And I saw a little bit of embarrassment on Heidi's face, which was very new, because Heidi wasn't the embarrassed type. But for some reason, what this girl said struck a nerve with her. Heidi, even though feeling very awkward, she managed to say, "Blake, you know that's not the same thing." And again, Blake, sounding like Regina George herself, goes, "You're right. You just met these two. Corey was my fiance." And that one line that Blake dropped caused gasps around the rest of the villagers, and it looked as if these two were about to start ripping each other's hair out. But as intriguing as this juicy drama was, and as potentially entertaining as this cat
still gotta
fight was
get on
about to be,
beat.
it was
What-
going to have to wait because I didn't care much about
Dr.
their
Doyle.
little relationship
Dr.
drama.
Doyle.
And clearly Bobby was more fed up than me because he cut off whatever they were doing and he started barking at Dr. Doyle. He walked right up into Dr. Doyle's face, nose to nose, and he said exactly what I wanted to say. He just beat me to it. He pointed directly at Heidi and snarled, "Why did you do that to her?" And then on the back end of his sentence, before Dr. Doyle could chime in and reply, he added on top of it insult to injury. "She trusted you and you betrayed her." Heidi tried to jump in this situation, trying to imply that Dr. Doyle didn't betray her. But we were very sick of anybody else here talking other than him. So I put my hand up towards her like, let the man speak. So I'm standing there, staring at Dr. Doyle's face, trying to get a gauge of what his intentions are or what his emotions in this situation are. I'm trying to see if there's guilt on his face, or if he's going to attempt to lie, or if there's aggression on his face and he's looking for a fight. And mind you, Bobby and I are in his face, borderline picking.
I don't got nothing to say.
And with what we had
I don't
just
got
been
nothing.
through, taking a little bit of anger out on somebody who caused it would have hit the spot. But as I'm staring into this man's soul through the top of my eyes with my fists clenched until my knuckles are white and my jaw tightened until you could see the striations on the side of my head and in my temples, all I see in this man's eyes is pity. But he wasn't feeling sorry for himself, and he wasn't feeling guilty for what he did to Heidi. He wasn't scared of me or Bobby. He was looking at us as if he pitied us. He looked like your parent that is about to tell you that the family dog died while you were at school. To be honest, he looked like he had some really bad news for people that he genuinely cared about, and he was going to be the one that had to break it to them. And I tried to not show him that I was picking up on this. I wanted to stay angry because being angry is easy, but when somebody's looking at you the way he was looking at us, it makes you very internally uncomfortable. Because you start to question your stance on the dilemma. And you start thinking about all of the possible things that he must know that you're ignorant of that would make him feel this level of pity towards you. And in my chest, I could feel the confusion growing. But there was nothing that I could do other than demand to know why. Why are you looking at me like that? So that's exactly what I said. Tell me why you're looking at me like that. And in a very empathetic and borderline scared tone, Dr. Doyle said the first words that came out of his mouth since we had arrived. This man said, "Please tell me you don't have kids at home. That's going to make this process much harder." And as I'm trying to comprehend what he just said, I start reactively answering his question by shaking my head. Like my body was replying, shaking my head no, to tell him like, no, I don't have any kids. But what a ridiculous thing to say. And in my head, I'm thinking, why does that matter? And what process are you talking about? But Bobby was doing the same thing that I was doing, reactively shaking his head no. And Dr. Doyle seemed to be visibly relieved that we were both saying, no, we don't have kids at home. As if that answer from both of us was going to make this situation so much better. His reaction genuinely pissed me off because I didn't want him to feel any relief. I didn't want him to feel like he regained any control in the situation. I wanted him to feel like he was on the back foot. So I followed up by saying, "What are you on about?" I wanted him to feel weird about what he was saying. But for some reason, the momentum of this conversation seemed to be shifting into his favor. I could feel his confidence growing, even though his eyes were still darting around. And he was still clearly grasping at straws, trying to figure out what he was going to say next. But I still felt the control slipping away from us, especially when he followed up by saying this. There's some things that you guys have to understand about what happens next. And I'm just standing there like, why is this guy talking like he is in control here? And why do I internally feel like he's in control? Why does it feel like it's shifting towards him? And as much as I wanted answers about this entire thing, the panic of this going differently than I had imagined made me internally want to leave. I started to become hyper aware of my surroundings, and I started scanning all of the villagers that had surrounded us. And I wasn't sure if his confidence was building because all of these people were in on some type of ambush plan. So I'm trying to shoot aggressive looks at anybody I can make eye contact with to try to scare them off from trying anything. But as I'm looking around and I'm trying to start altercations with my eyes, I noticed that every single person here is looking at us with that same level of pity. And if I'm being honest with you, I wish they looked like an angry mob. I wish I caught some looks and could pick some fights in the crowd, because their demeanor about this whole situation was throwing me off. It was like a group of people walking up to a tragedy, and they looked like they were genuinely, from deep in their hearts, sorry for us. But I'm standing there, and I'm like, they're looking like they're sorry for me, but I should feel sorry for them, because these people are in absolute shambles. And it wasn't just their odd mismatching clothes or their below average hygiene. They all had something wrong with them, and it wasn't anything crazy. They weren't major deformities. They weren't like the hills have eyes. There was just like a thing off about each one of them. Like,
Wawa's $5 big breakfast deal gets you any sizzly, any coffee, and a hash brown for $5. Gotta have a Wawa. Metal supermarkets. The convenience.
For the try to get my eye for copyright for some bullshit.
like scars, or they had an eye patch, or they were missing an ear, or they had a visible limp, like they were clearly in ongoing pain. And in that moment, I felt like they had all been through some level of interrogation or some form of torture, because all of the injuries that they had seemed very specific and very intentional. But all of the stimulation and visual information was overloading. It was overwhelming for me. All I wanted to do was leave. I just wanted to get out of there. And luckily, that's all Bobby wanted as well. Because his rebuttal to Dr. Doyle was, there's something that you're gonna need to understand. We're leaving this freaky little village you built. Heidi, feel free to come with us. Doug, let's get out of here. That was enough for me. I'm good. Let's skedaddle, big dog. I'm good on this whole situation. So we turn around to start walking back towards that big hole in the trees that we initially came in. And I look towards Heidi like, yo, you coming? And I realized that all the trust that we had built with her was out the window. She was nothing but one of these weird cult members because she couldn't even get herself to look up from the floor. It's clear that her allegiance is towards the people that were torturing her, and she has no intention of letting us help her. There's nothing that we could do to help a lost cause like that. And as we start picking up the pace,
I would be like,
fully committing to
you straight?
leaving this
You going?
group on,
You
Dr.
staying?
Doyle
I bet.
shouts over to us in such
Just
an
met this
odd
bit. What the fuck?
way. This man says, there's no need to run, guys. Nobody's chasing you. Go slow. Take your time climbing out. We don't need any busted noses. I hated the way that he said that. He sounded like a parent shouting over to their child, trying to keep them
You
safe.
good?
And
Like,
he used the tone as if he knows something that we don't. Like, we're so brand new to the world that he's got to let us know to climb out of this safe. Like, dude, we climbed in.
it's not gonna let them out. It's a veil. They're stuck. These people are trapped in here. They built this. Hypothesis. We're all trapped here. Yo. Wait, they're all trapped. Hold on, wait a minute. I might be wrong, but that's a good ass hypothesis. Am I wrong? Is that a good ass hypothesis or not? W's in the chat. L's in the chat if it's low key L's. W's if it is. If it's, you know what I'm saying, it's type shit.
We know. We have no idea if this is some type of decoy and he's trying to buy time to close off the exit. So naturally, we start picking up the pace a little bit into
It's
a
always
jump.
that
We
one.
get a little bit of distance from the group, and
Check
we're
it out,
closing
fam.
in on the hole in the trees that we
Just
came in
be
initially.
chill for
And
one
I
time, bro.
still
Be
hear
chill.
Dr. Doyle continuing to call over to us that nobody's chasing us and we don't need to run. And when I look back over my shoulder, he's not lying. Everybody's standing exactly where they were. He's standing in place, just watching us, making sure that we're safe. And the rest of the village members are dispersing in
He said broken noses.
a very
How would they
sad
get that?
manner. I continue to hear him shouting in the distance, please be careful, guys. Slow down a little bit. And this is only making us pick up speed. He's being so weird. Everything about this is throwing us off. So we start picking up speed. At this point, we're in a healthy run. And we're not going so fast that I can't look back at him, that I need to like watch every step that I take. But we're going fast enough that there's no way he's going to be able to catch up. And as we're about 10 feet from the hole in the trees, I look back at him one more time. And he has his fists clenched together, and his face is grimacing as if he's watching a street skater attempt a very dangerous trick, and he's expecting a gruesome injury. Part of me is second guessing our actions, but most of me knows
Bro,
that
this
I'm
shit
gonna
giving
feel
me-
much
bro.
better when I hop out of this bizarre circle in this tree line and out of this village. In the base of this opening, it's not very high. It's not like we're gonna have to climb out of this thing. It was about
Bozzy.
2.5 feet off the ground, so at the pace that Bobby and
This
I are
my anxiety
running,
is
we're going
crazy.
to be able to easily hop out of this thing. We weren't even gonna have to touch this thing. We probably
What's
didn't need
going
to break
on,
our
Priscilla?
stride. All we gotta do is hop
What's going
over
on,
this
Priscilla?
hurdle and
How
we're
you
out
doing?
here.
How you
So I
doing?
load
Alright.
up for a single leg jump, and
He
I
said,
find
what's
out
going on? He about to
why
go to sleep.
Dr. Doyle told us to take our time. My big toe hit it first, followed by my kneecap, followed by my nose and my forehead. I collided with what felt like a plexiglass wall. These absolute
And look at this bitch ass nigga Z. He about to go. He about to go. He about to leave. Fam. And this nigga about to leave. This nigga's about to leave, bro. He literally just said exactly what I would, bro. Okay, bro. That's what I'm saying, bro. Bang, bang.
dropped. All we gotta do is hop over this hurdle and we're out of here. So I load up for a single leg jump and I find out why Dr. Doyle told us to take our time. My big toe hit it first, followed by my kneecap, followed by my nose and my forehead. I collided with what felt like a plexiglass wall. These absolute freak shows put up a see-through barrier to trap us in here, but didn't want us to be able to see that we were locked in, because we could see right through it. There was no glare of the sun, there was no streaks on it, there was no way to tell that there was a barrier between us and the outside. So we both ran face first into this plexiglass barrier like an excited dog who had never experienced a glass door. There's nothing worse than getting hit by something that you didn't see coming. And there's nothing more humiliating than running into a glass wall. And there's nothing more terrifying.
I heard what he
than seeing
said.
a man
You
who
was
has
supposed to.
clearly
You was supposed to.
intentionally trapped
You was
slowly
supposed to.
walking up behind you as you're nursing
But
an
I don't
injury.
give a
And
fuck.
he's walking
Tell your ass
so
to sleep.
slowly that it
It's past your
exudes his
bedtime, little
confidence that he knows for sure
Fuck wrong
that
with
you
you,
have
nigga?
nowhere to run.
Just call me Kira. Alright, Kira. The Glass. Part 2. Let's go.
Dr. Doyle is walking up to us like he is not in a hurry, and he's not even slightly concerned that we're going to get up and run away and try to find a different exit. He's walking up to us like he's done this 100 times, but Dr. Doyle must have forgot that the last time that we saw him, we pointed 2 barrels in his face. So I got to my feet, putting most of my weight on my left leg because my right knee took the brunt of the impact. And I look towards Bobby, and he's clearly thinking the same thing that I'm thinking, but I noticed that his nose took the brunt of his impact. His nose looked like Mike Perry's nose after Vicente Luque was done with him.
Damn.
And don't look that image up if you have a weak stomach. His nose was smeared across his face like it was cream cheese, but
Wait,
Bobby
wait a minute,
got
wait
his
a minute.
eyes cleared from the
He said, wait, what?
My right knee took the brunt of the impact, and I looked towards Bobby, and he's clearly thinking the same thing that I'm thinking, but I noticed that his nose took the brunt of his impact. His nose looked like Mike Perry's nose.
Mike Perry.
After Vicente Luque was done with him. And
He said, "Don't look it up if you got a weak stomach." It's not bad though. It's like that nigga doing that shit the whole time, and his shit just like this. Like, I don't know if I want to show y'all, but he looked hella different. I'm gonna be so real. He looked hella different, twin. You could tell this nigga caught a knee. I'm gonna show y'all. Y'all see this nigga nose? Alright, that's it. I'm gonna just flash it, because I don't know if YouTube on, you know what I'm saying. Remy, when you getting off live? I don't know, probably 2 o'clock.
don't look that image up if you have a weak stomach. His nose was
Don't look that up if you got a weak stomach. He low-key dragged that a little bit. I ain't gonna lie.
Smeared across his face like it was cream cheese. But Bobby got his eyes cleared from the tears and he had his weapon drawn just like I did. I had to step up and do the talking on this one because he had taken much more damage than I did. He set the example the first time, so this time I knew what to do. I knew how to step up to this guy. And I'm staring at Dr. Doyle, who's taking a leisurely stroll up to us. And I wait until he's in earshot, not to mention until he's in the perfect range for me to turn him into Swiss cheese. And I tell him something very specific that I meant in that moment. If you don't open this barrier, I promise.
Wait, y'all not on spring break, fam? I'm on spring break right now. Damn, you gotta take her to school. Yeah, I'm gonna get off at 2. Just for you, Benet. I'm gonna get off at 2.
Miss I'll kill you. And this man replied in the most nonchalant tone, "What do you see?" That smug response lit me up. What do I see? Bro, I'm seeing red right now, but I'm trying to keep it cool and stern. So I reply to him, "Now don't end up dead, Doyle." I thought that was a pretty sweet line that might get through to him and might convey.
Now don't end up dead, Doyle. Ooh. And that's his last name. You know that boy mean business.
To him just how dead serious I was. But he wasn't picking up on what I was putting down because his response was, "I see the highlands when I look out the glass." And initially, I couldn't put a finger on why that statement was so chilling to me. The pressure in this moment was so intense that scanning my memories for the relevancy in that sentence was borderline impossible. He said, "I see the highlands when I look out the glass." What could he mean by that? I see the highlands when I look out the glass. The glass. Heidi had mentioned the glass when we first met her. She had asked us where we were when we first saw the glass. And when we didn't know what she meant, she corrected herself by asking us where we saw the circle where it shouldn't have been. So the entrance to this place is the glass. And Heidi had asked us where we were when we saw the glass. And now Dr. Doyle is asking us what we...
He came in here a different path. He was somewhere else when he came here. Wait a minute.
We see when we look back through it, which is pretty much the same question from two people. We see where we came from. We found it hiking towards Mirror Lake, just like everybody else here. This is where you guys decided to set up shop for this weird-ass village. What type of freaky mind games are these people playing? All my trust for Heidi is completely out the window at this point, but my reality completely shatters when Dr. Doyle starts speaking again. He goes, "Heidi sees a nice little trail in Saugerties near the Catskill Mountains. Blake and Corey made their way in through Shenandoah, out in Virginia. Roman, bless his heart, stumbled in here through the dancing forest in Kaliningrad. And when I look out this glass, I see the Scottish Highlands. I see the last place that I was before I was here. We all do." Bobby yelled for him to open the barrier again with real desperation in his voice this time. He was fighting the reality that we were in. He didn't want to believe the conclusions that he was coming to in his own head based on what Dr. Doyle was saying. But Dr. Doyle was patient, as if he'd been through exactly what we were going through. Like I could tell that this guy genuinely felt sorry for us. And he continued by saying,
That's why he asked if they got jits at home. Because they won't make it back. They won't make it back for a while or some shit like that.
Out before you give up looking for it, please do me a favor and come and get me before you leave. I'll be in the tavern when you're ready to talk, and please don't shoot me in the back. You both know that I'm not capable of all this. He gestured to the entire place, like the village as a whole, when he referred to not being capable of all of this. Then he turned around and slowly made his way back into this bizarre village. We both stood there and watched him walk all the way away
Still
from
in his
us
own
until
world.
he finally
My
entered.
fault. But twins, cool. You don't have to get off on 2. I don't mind. I'll just wake up extra early. Nah, I was planning on going to sleep at 2. I'm not gonna lie. I want to get up 2 tomorrow. I think I'm finna go somewhere. So we chilling. Yeah, really, bruh. You called it, didn't you? Fam, we about to get off at 2. It's cool. And I'm about to get back on later today.
A small building that resembled a medieval tavern. I look back at Bobby's busted up face, and he's wiping it clean with his t-shirt, and he's doing his best to readjust his nose. I give him a quick, like, "Dude, you okay?" And he gives me a slight nod, like, "I'm alright." But he follows up by saying, "Dude, there has to be a way out." And we don't hesitate for a moment. We immediately start looking for a different exit. We were trying to stay in a mindset that rooted us in our reality, but it's very hard to do that, especially when the problem that you're facing doesn't follow the laws of physics and looks like an optical illusion. And I'm saying that because I know that you're probably thinking, why wouldn't we just walk and push through the tree line to exit this mini forest? It's not like the only exit is this opening in the trees. You could just walk through the foliage. You know, we don't have to climb through this circle in the trees. We could just wedge our way through the forest and find a different exit. We thought that too until we were on the inside looking out. Like from the outside looking in. We wouldn't have needed to climb through the circle in the trees. We could have pushed by the foliage and entered this small forest. But the circle was on the edge of the tree line from the outside. But from the inside of it, it was not on the edge of the tree line. There wasn't a clearing directly ahead. The only way to the clearing was through this glass, this large circle glass barrier. This is the weird part. There was about 50 yards further of forest behind this glass. You could even walk around it and look at it from the other side. And from the other side, you would see that same still image of where you came from. It looked like it was a floating moment in time encased in acrylic resin. But it wasn't just a standstill photo. When you're looking at this image that's stuck in the glass, the trees are moving in the wind, there's still animals running around. It was more like it was a live video feed, but we couldn't get through it from the other side either. And eventually, of course, you're gonna start to lose hope that it's an exit. Nothing about it makes sense. It's hard as a rock. You can't get through it. It looks like where you came from, but part of it just feels like it's teasing you. You're forced to go and attempt to find another exit. And keep in mind that Bobby and I are in an absolute panic at this point. We both knew exactly what Dr. Doyle was implying with what he told us, but we couldn't get ourselves to grasp the concept. We were in pure denial, doing everything that we could to find an alternate exit. And like I said, there was more forest beyond this glass from the inside. So we figured,
stay home, cook some food for yourself, twin. Watch some
This optical
TV.
illusion has to end
Chill,
somewhere, and it did.
relax.
Just not in the way that we were
Relax.
hoping that it would. It
That's it.
ended about
Just
50
relax,
yards
come on.
past the glass, through some very dense trees and foliage. And when you go in that direction away from the village, you eventually hit what seemed to be the face of a cliff. And this cliff face was completely vertical, and it was made out of what seemed to be limestone or granite. It was very, very dense. So once we saw that, we figured that we might as well follow this cliff face, and there must be a point where it becomes less steep and we might be able to climb our way out. So we start walking along this stone wall with our left hands touching it to make sure that we're not getting too far away from it. And we start walking clockwise around the village. And we realize when we're about 10 minutes into this walk that we're about halfway around the village, and absolutely nothing had changed. It was as steep as when we found it. And this cliff face seemed to circle the village as if we were in some type of pit. We had fully circled the perimeter after about 20 minutes, and we realized that this cliff face ended right at the point of where the tavern was that Dr. Doyle was waiting for us. But we were still in complete denial. We were not ready to enter. So we turn around, we put our right hands on the wall, and we start walking counterclockwise the other direction just in case we miss something. But we circled this entire place again. We came to the exact same result, and we ended at this point on the other side of the tavern. And the tavern seemed to be built right up against this cliff face. There was nothing behind it. There was no trees behind this tavern. It was as if it was tucked in the point of a cliff. So just so you can picture this properly, this is what the village was like. This is what the landscape was like. Picture an illustration of a teardrop, but the teardrop is lying horizontally. So one side of the teardrop has a point, and the other side rounds out into a much more circular endpoint. The main village and all of the buildings that were in this main village were all closer to the point of the teardrop, with the tavern being placed like directly at that point. And the closer that you got to the center of this teardrop, the less trees there were. There was like clearings and room for structures and just room for people to do daily chores and build stuff, walk around. The center of this place seemed much more lived in, but the closer that you got to the edges of this place, the more dense the trees became. And the deeper that you got into the round side of it, the more that it was just forest. It wasn't lived in at all. But the trees became very, very dense the closer that you got to the cliff walls. So by the time we circled this entire place for the second time and we were back at the other side of the tavern, we realized that this place was completely enclosed by these cliff walls, and our only option was to try to climb out of this thing. The issue was that the canopy of trees was so thick near the walls that we couldn't see how tall the walls actually were. And when you stand closer to the center where there's like less trees and you can see through the canopy, you can only see the sky because you're not close enough to the walls to see how tall they are. And when you look in the direction to the left or the right, it gets too dense. There's a canopy in the way. You can't see the top of these cliffs. So in a sheer panic, Bobby and I try about 10 different methods of shimmying up one of these trees. And we finally find a tree that's fairly easy to climb, and I boost Bobby up until he could reach one of the thick branches. We test to see if it's weight bearing, it could hold his weight. He climbs himself up. He climbs all the way up this tree until he's completely out of my sight. I could barely see him at the top of this tree. Even though he's barely visible, I could tell that he's probably high enough that he could get his head above the leaves and look out of the canopy of this tree. But I don't hear anything from him until he makes his way down slowly and lands on the ground next to me. And he's just shaking his head as if he doesn't want to believe what he just saw. But the guy can't make me wait all day. He's eventually going to have to cough up this information. And in a very discouraged voice, he's just shaking his head saying, they have to be at least 100 feet tall all the way around. Bro, we're going to need bolts and ropes and gear if we're going to climb out. And even then, I don't think either of us are skilled enough climbers to do it. Like, dude, we need some serious tools to even make an attempt. So naturally, in the sheer panic of that realization that we're completely surrounded by 100-foot cliff faces in a
Why you watching me?
Village, the only thing we could think of doing is circling this place one more time because
for real a
maybe we missed something
What
on
do
the
you mean a
first two.
potato?
And we make a half circle. We find ourselves on the furthest end of the round half of whatever this place is. And it was like simultaneously, Bobby and I both felt the defeat. We looked at each other at the exact same moment, and I could tell that he was thinking the exact same thing that I was. I think it's time we both go talk to Dr. Doyle because there's no way we're going to be able to escape this place ourselves. And nobody's trying to hold us here. These walls are holding everybody here. But if we all band together...
But did I not just say that though? Did I not just say that though? Did I not just say they were stuck? A upside down ketchup bottle. You guys while I'm watching you, nigga, you're live. Wait, what? No, not watching me. I'm sorry. Z, go your ass to bed, twin. Go your ass to bed, twin.
These people that are stuck here, we might be able to climb out. All it took was a light. Bro, you ready? For both of us to start walking back to the tavern. And like I said, I don't mean to remind you again, all of the buildings were closer to the point of this place. So we start walking in that direction, through the forest that is the round side. We noticed that everybody pretty much stayed near the village and near the buildings because we hadn't seen anybody near the edges, and there was clearly nobody wandering around to the round side where it's mostly dense forest. We were primarily isolated. But as we're about halfway to the tavern, still pretty deep in this dense forest, we see one villager walking towards us. Not directly towards us where we'll bump into him if neither of us move, but like 10 feet to the left. We weren't going to walk directly into this guy, but we were definitely going to walk past him. And this dude is definitely going through it as well because he's talking to himself. He's got his arms waving around in the air. It was as if he was in this kind of episode where he's going over past arguments in his head and planning future arguments, and his eyes are googling around in every single direction. He's completely cockeyed, looking left and right. And the closer that he keeps getting to us, we could both clearly hear that he's not even
Does he drink it like that?
And I couldn't tell exactly what language he was speaking, but it had to be some type of Slavic
This is a
language.
zesty fucking Got you.
Polish,
Got you.
Bulgarian, or
Got you.
Czech.
We know
I could
how
tell it
old
was
y'all
one
niggas
of
is.
those.
Got
Because he
you.
was speaking in a
Got
very
you,
odd
dude.
cadence. I
Niggas
might
can't
be able
even
to
drink
narrow it
juice now.
down, but the way he was
Got you.
talking, there was no way to tell. He had a manic
you.
aura to him, and I could tell
Y'all
that
got
even
it,
if I
so.
spoke the language that he was speaking, this dude wasn't making any sense. He didn't look necessarily dangerous, he just seemed crazy and in his own world. But obviously, we're on high alert. Both of us are staring at this guy just to make sure he doesn't make any crazy moves, and I could see that one of his eyes catch on to the fact that we're looking at him. He immediately stops and whips his crazy head towards us. We don't know what else to do but awkwardly stop with him, staring at him and just go,
Good night,
hey.
Tim.
He was already looking pretty freaky, but after we spoke to him, even though it was only one word, his eyes widened as far as they could go like a predator at midnight, and he spoke one word back to us. He desperately yelled, Privat, before sprinting towards us like a Call of Duty zombie limp on. We were already on edge in this scenario, so it's not like he caught us off guard. He didn't have the jump on us. He wasn't able to close the distance efficiently. We were already in defense mode, so right when he started running towards us, we both gave him a shimmy, and we wiggled past this dude easily, got behind him, and both started darting towards the tavern. And once he missed his initial lunge at us, he was far too old to catch up to us. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. The reality was that he was a beaten down older man. And there was no way that he was going to outrun us, especially when he probably used the majority of his energy in his initial sprint and lunge towards us. We didn't bother to stop and look back at him on our way to the tavern. But I kept hearing him yelling the same word that he said to us at first. He was just shouting it in the distance as he was desperately trying to catch up to us. Privat. So we eventually make it into the main clearing of this village where there's random miscellaneous villagers wandering around, doing their seemingly daily chores, just going about their day. And they looked up at us.
But how was that gay though? Sitting up to drink juice? How is that gay? Nigga, you know you got caught. For doing what?
Startled that we were sprinting into the village, and they had a little bit of relief in their face when they saw that it was just us entering the village. But when they were
Like,
able to
what
start
the John,
hearing that
bro?
man shouting behind us, closing in on the village, they all seemed to turn their gaze and duck their heads and pretend as if they weren't hearing it. I thought it was strange, but I didn't have the time to stop and ask these villagers why they were behaving this way.
What does
or
zesty
why they were
mean?
acting
Zesty means gay. It's a different word for G-A-Y.
as if they were ignoring this man. That's what it was like. It was like they heard his voice and they were like, nope, I don't hear you. But I didn't have time to chop it up with these people. I needed answers from Dr. Doyle. So we quickly opened the tavern door, slipped in, and closed it behind us. And there was a pretty straightforward bolt lock on the inside of this door, so we just took it upon ourselves to go ahead and lock this place up, just in case the man that was shouting and chasing us saw what building we entered. Which he definitely did, because a few moments later he was at the door slamming on it. And he was just scratching and clawing and punching at this door, screaming that same word until he seemed to tire himself out. And his shouting eventually turned into what seemed to be like a faint cry, and he kind of gave up and he turned around and we heard him walking back in the direction that he came. The way that he was crying was heartbreaking. There was a level of hopelessness and loneliness in it, and I'd never heard it to that extent before. We had been pressing our shoulders up against the door just in case he was planning on knocking it off his hinges, so we hadn't had the opportunity to turn around and inspect our surroundings yet. But when this guy gave up and our jobs as human door wedges was over, we were able to turn around and take in where we were.
The tavern. Part 3. Not demure.
We saw Dr. Doyle sitting at a bar, and we looked around and we saw a couple other villagers scattered around this place eating at random tables. This place looked like the type of place that you would stop to have a cauldron of mead after a week-long horseback journey. Everything was made of wood. There was straw all over the floor, and there was a fireplace going in the corner. And even in this dire situation, I couldn't help but to notice how lovely it smelled in there. It smelled like a mixture of vegetables and meats being braised and savory pies being cooked in a wood fire oven. It smelled rich and full of flavor. I couldn't remember the last time me and Bobby ate, and my primal instincts were salivating at the smell of this food. And I think it lowered my guard. I definitely lowered Bobby's guard, because right before that we were in such a hectic panic. But inside of this tavern was rather warm and cozy. And when Dr. Doyle called over to us to join him at the bar, we listened. We didn't give him any pushback. We didn't give him any sass. We didn't start an altercation. Maybe because we were hoping that if we're nice, we could get a meal. Or maybe because we came to terms with the fact that we need to cooperate with this man if we want to figure out, get any gauge on where we are stuck. We sat down next to him and neither of us said anything to him for a few moments. I was just watching Dr. Doyle eat his lunch, and to me, he didn't
Why?
seem like an evil man. He didn't seem like a man that was keeping us here against our will.
Ain't gonna lie,
He
mine
looked like a
was
man
earlier,
in his daily
but
routine,
then I low-key chilled.
enjoying his lunch the best that he could. And I could see the stress wrinkles on his forehead and the crow's feet near his eyes. And I see quite a few characteristics that I'm very familiar with. He looks like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he's pretending to be okay. And at this very moment, he's indulging in a routine that helps him cope. He looks like he's been here 100 times in this exact same seat at this exact same bar with the exact same plate of food in front of him. And I could tell by the way that he's eating, he has a specific way that he eats this dish. He was having some type of beef pot pie, but he clearly had a routine with this dish.
Pot pies are so hard.
There was a correct way to eat it to him. He removed the top of the pie to let the stew steam till it got to room temperature. And as he's waiting for the stew to cool down, he's breaking off pieces of the pie crust and dipping it into the gravy and eating them as chips. And once the stew gravy finally cooled down, he took the pie crust that he removed originally and broke it up into it like he was breaking up crackers into a soup. He ate only
I do the same shit.
the carrots first and then the pieces of celery. Then he ate the peas and the
Not the chip part, but I crush up. That shit tastes so good.
miscellaneous
I want a pot
vegetables.
pie.
Then once there was only meat, gravy, and the bottom of the pie crust left, he broke up all the crust and stirred it together, and he finished it off eating it with
I do the same thing.
large spoonfuls, clearly savoring his favorite part of this dish for last. I knew this was a coping mechanism because it's mine too. We all have little things that give us comfort in our hectic lives, and what he was doing right now is his. And it made me sad in that moment watching him because I saw my young self in what he was doing. I'd search for change and I'd scrape together 50 cents to buy myself a Brown's chicken biscuit. I'd get a serving of the free ketchup and barbecue sauce, and I'd pick off small pieces of the biscuit and I would dunk it into each one of the sauces. And I would put my fingers so far into the sauce that I would eventually mix together until 1/4 of my fingers was also covered in sauce. And I'd put my fingers in my mouth to get all of the sauce in each bite, but I would savor the small piece of biscuit that was inside of each flavor-filled bite. And I'd break the biscuit into 100 small pieces to trick myself into thinking that I had 100 bites of food. And the whole time I would pretend that each bite was from a full meal, and every bite was a different piece from one of the various combo meals. I know that's not exactly the same, but I can tell when someone's coping. I had plenty of those biscuits over the years, and I had a very strict routine on how I ate them, and that routine comforted me. And for some reason, seeing that we shared a trauma warmed me up to the idea of trusting him. And the first thing that he said to us reassured a lot of the conclusions that I was jumping to. Dr. Doyle goes, "I would have given up a long time ago if it wasn't for this place. Because out there, whatever the rest of this place is, it's nothing but suffering. But no matter what happens, no matter who dies, no matter what sick game it throws at us next, I get to come here for a hot meal, a cold drink, and a warm fire. And for 1 hour a day, I feel like I might be okay. It gives me just enough hope to walk back out that door and be the pillar that all of these people need me to be." And there were so many questions flowing through my head in that moment. I wanted to know where we were, first and foremost. But secondly, I wanted to know who was in charge of this place. I also wanted to know about all of the different strategies that he used to try and escape this place. What have they tried already? And I wanted to know about the games that he was referring to because we had encountered them already. And I wanted to know, really wanted to know, who was leaving these games for us. And I wanted to know why he did what he did to Heidi. And I also wanted to know who that Slavic man with cock eyes was that chased us to this tavern. But Bobby asked the question that mattered the most before I was able to come up with any of mine. And it was important because his question had multiple answers to it. From what we knew up until this point, there were some hard to accept conclusions about Bobby and I's future here. There were things that we didn't want to believe. There were things that we didn't think were possible. There were conclusions that we came to about these villagers and about Dr. Doyle. And these conclusions could be proven false based on Dr. Doyle's answer to Bobby's question. And with a glint of fear in Bobby's eyes, Bobby asked Dr. Doyle, "How long have you been here?" And Dr. Doyle put down his cutlery and looked at us for the first time since we sat down next to him. And he said this with true empathy in his voice. 1 year, 2 months, and 18 days. My son turns 4 tomorrow, and he hasn't seen his daddy in 1 year, 2 months, and 18 days. His answer said it all, and it made so much of what he was trying to tell us make sense. And the reality of our situation smacked us in the face. Nobody in this village wants to be here, and everybody in this village is stuck here. Everyone entered whatever this place was from a completely different location. And when everybody looks out of the glass that they came in here from, they see the landscape of where they came from, and everybody sees something different. And the entire village was looking at us with pity because they all remembered their first day here. Dr. Doyle looks better than most of the other villagers that are here, so that means that he's been here for far less time than some of them have. And they all had the right to feel sorry for us because they all knew that we weren't going to be able to go home. We were stuck here with them now. And Dr. Doyle asked us if we had kids at home because he didn't want us to go through the same pain that he was going through right now. He had been looking out for us since the moment that we arrived. But the only thing that this didn't explain was what were they doing to Heidi when we first got here? Why was this man being so cruel to a person that clearly trusted him? And when I was about to ask him my follow-up question about Heidi, another man came from around the corner holding 2 plates of food. And this guy had a big
His daddy
smile
got
on
the
his
milk.
face. He looked to be probably in his 60s. He had a white beard and he had white hair. And he actually looked a bit jolly, as if he wasn't carrying the same pain as everybody else here. He placed the 2 plates of food in front of Bobby and I, and he gave us another big smile. Dr. Doyle thanked him, and he called him Keep, which I could only assume was short for, like, keeper, as if this guy is the keeper of this tavern, the innkeeper. And before he walked back to where he came from, which we can assume is the kitchen, he looked back and said something fairly nice to Bobby and I. He said, if you ever need to talk to somebody, I'm always here. He clearly was aware of the mental turmoil that we were going through as well. He just didn't seem so upset with his situation. It was different. But Dr. Doyle very quickly explained why his demeanor was so much different than the rest of the village. He waited until the innkeeper was out of the room completely and out of earshot before saying, don't envy that man. He's been here longer than all of us. He was born here. He doesn't know anything else. When people have told him about the outside world and all of the great things that are in it, he refuses to listen, and he thinks that it doesn't exist. He thinks that we're the crazy ones. And whatever this place is, it's been his only home. And when it's all you know, it's all you've ever known, it's hard to understand how cruel it is. And his relentless optimism can get on your nerves when you're filled with as much cynicism as I am. But if I'm going to be honest with you, I've come to love his blissful ignorance and his God-gifted culinary talents. Dr. Doyle could see all of the questions that were burning in our eyes, but he insisted that we eat. And he told us that while we're eating, he will continue to talk and explain as much as he can about himself and this place.
You already know that
to catch us up. But he just wants us to eat. That was music to our ears. We started stuffing our face and listening intently. Dr. Doyle took a big, deep breath, and he started a monologue that almost seemed like it was rehearsed.
That was the hose
he
you do.
clearly has done this plenty of times. Because we can only imagine that everybody that shows up to this place probably has a similar reaction to the one that we had. And everybody needs a similar, delicate explanation about the horrors that we're stuck in. This is what he said. My name is James Doyle, and I have a doctorate in philosophy, specifically historical linguistics. I studied lost languages, and I was a professor at Trinity University in Dublin, where I taught Scottish Gaelic. And if I'm being candid with you, the people of this village are very lucky that I came here. Because if it wasn't for me, everybody here would still be living night to night. It wasn't always like this, because before I arrived, nobody understood the rules of this place. And it's not because they were stupid or because they were ignoring obvious signs. They simply couldn't read the language that was being displayed to them. You two have made it back through the gap, so you've both experienced some of the games that this place presents. And I'm not going to pretend like I know why it does it this way. Through that gap into whatever that other place is, for some reason the rules are presented in English. But for some reason, here at the village, all of the rules are presented in Gaelic, and no one here spoke Gaelic until I arrived. So everybody here was ignoring the games that were being presented because they didn't even know how to play. And hopefully, you two are never going to have to learn how dangerous ignoring a game is. And we have something in common. You two went through the same cycle that I did, because I was forced to go through the gap on my first day here, just like you. Apparently, what's beyond the gap changes with the seasons. There are 4 different configurations beyond the gap. If you were to go back through the gap tomorrow, you'd see the same configuration that you both saw when you went through the first time. But if you wait until next week when the season changes, you'd come across a completely different configuration. It would be totally different behind the gap. But since an entire year has passed since I went in, I knew that you were entering the same one that I went through, and we're still in summer. But summer ends next week, and I only know these things because of information that past villagers passed down to us. I've come to realize that this place has existed for a very long time, and over the course of who knows how many people and who knows how many lives, some information has been passed down and stored. It's not an impressive amount of information, but at least it's something. But before I arrived here, there must have been some type of reset, because nobody that was here when I arrived knew the rules of this place. Everybody was running around like chickens with their head cut off. But there was clearly a time here where people, or multiple groups of people, understood this place. They understood the rules because they were able to play the games and study it and leave valuable information for us. Bobby very quickly cut off Dr. Doyle's monologue while he still had a mouthful of food. He wasn't trying to cut off the streamline of information that Dr. Doyle was giving us because we were clearly enjoying it. We were very happy that we were getting filled in, but he just wanted to guide him in the direction towards the information that we wanted the most. He simply goes, "What do you mean they were living night to night?" And Dr. Doyle nods in a very understanding way. He wasn't totally opposed to being cut off. And us chiming in very quickly to change the direction of where he was going helped him give us the highest priority information that we wanted to know the most about. It helped him give it to us quicker. So he slightly changes the direction of his monologue and goes, well, since they didn't speak the language and they couldn't understand the rules that were being presented to them, well, not even just not understand the rules, but not understand that a game was being presented to them in general. They repeatedly ignored them. And if there's one thing that I could say about this place that's abundantly true, is that it punishes you severely if you don't play along.
The games.
But the games here, the games in the village, are much different than the games that you experienced on the other side of the gap. The games out there are much more like a mission that needs to be fulfilled. But the games in here, the ones that are presented in the village, they're far more cruel than that. They're a bit sadistic, if I'm being honest with you, and
why did you wink to the camera again?
It never rewards us if we complete one of the games.
I felt like I looked good right there, so I had to wink at myself.
It's always worse than just getting it over with and playing. No matter how cruel and terrible the game is, the punishment for ignoring it is going to be infinitely worse, and it's going to punish somebody at random. This place lashes out if you don't play along. So no matter what game it presents, you need to remember that always playing is always better. So I took my chance to chime in because I wanted to know some of the specifics. I found this very interesting. I wanted a couple examples of what these games were going to be like to prep myself. Not because I wanted to hear examples about cruel, sadistic games. I just wanted to be ready for what we were going to experience in the near future.
You ain't gonna hype yourself up. Who is, you know?
What kind of games are we talking about here? Then Dr. Doyle looks at the floor, then looks at the ceiling, as if he's trying to recall as many games as he possibly can. And he's shuffling through all of them, trying to figure out which one he's going to use as the examples. And I could tell by his movements that he was very uncomfortable going through his memories. I could see that it was hard for him to have to recall all of these cruel acts that he had to witness. He starts talking again, trying to give us the best answer possible. And through his teeth, he says, well, they're always different. They're always very unique and very specific. And some of them are actually ongoing. And actually, that reminds me, I owe you a couple answers about the man that was knocking at the door when you first came in here. And if I explain to you what happened to him, you'll start to understand just how strange these games are. If you recall, I mentioned a man named Roman while we were out by the glass. And I mentioned that he entered here through the dancing forest in Russia. And soon after he arrived, a game was presented that clearly made him a target. And I don't know why this place chose to do that to him. I don't know why it chooses to continue to force us to do it to him. But what I'm assuming, because he was chasing you and yelling, was that you looked his direction. And I'm assuming you might have even greeted him. And I need to warn you, you can never do that again. When he arrived here about 6 months ago, he didn't speak any English whatsoever. Nobody here was able to communicate with him or build a relationship with him. We tried our best, but Under these conditions, nobody wanted to be a full-time tutor. And a few days after his arrival, a game popped up that was uniquely evil. Every village member had to agree and choose one village member to completely excommunicate. And it told us that we had 3 minutes to choose upon reading the rules in the sign, otherwise the gap would open. And when the gap opens around here, you never know what's going to come through. And you sure as hell never know how many people are going to die. As a community, we couldn't risk that. We can't risk the gap opening and people dying at random. We needed to choose in that moment who we were all going to stop talking to. We needed to choose one person that we were all going to pretend literally didn't exist. And these were our options. We choose the person that nobody can communicate with anyway, or we let random people die. We all banded together and we chose Roman. We did it to protect each other. And the most devastating part about the whole situation was that Roman didn't even understand. He didn't know what I was saying when I was translating the rules of the game. He doesn't even know why everybody stopped speaking to him. He doesn't know why everyone that he sees ignores his existence. All he knows is that one day everybody came together in the forest and no one ever spoke to him again. And people continue to act like he doesn't exist because it's the safest thing for us. We weren't sure how long we had to not talk to him. Maybe after a few months we could start chatting with him again. We didn't know. One village member felt so sorry for him that they broke the silence and they spoke to Roman. They had a conversation with him. They showed him, I see you. I see that you exist. And the very next evening, we found pieces of that said village member scattered all over the forest. We have no idea what happened to them. We don't even know what did it. We only know that it happened directly after speaking to Roman. And before you get worried if you said hello to him or you looked at him, you don't really need to worry about that. There have been slip-ups similar to that, and those people have been fine. But now that you're aware of the rules and you're aware of that game, I wouldn't even risk looking in his direction. You need to convince him that you can't see him if you come across him again. I actually can't even get myself to look at him even if he's not looking at me, because his existence and the punishment that he's going through, it must be pure hell. He walks aimlessly around the village speaking to himself, but it's abundantly clear that he's lost his sanity. And if I were him, I'd probably think that I was a ghost stuck in purgatory. I would probably be questioning my own existence. That game stuck out to me as probably the most cruel. And I think it's a good example to prepare you guys for the life that you're gonna have to become callous to. I had finished my food at that point and I'm sitting there staring at Dr. Doyle. And I found myself with tears welling up in my eyes at the idea of being put into Roman's shoes. It would be absolute torture. It's torture enough being here in general. But being excommunicated and treated like you don't even exist by the only community available is a special kind of cruel. So Dr. Doyle just continues. He tries to follow up this absolutely tragic story with something a bit more lighthearted. I guess he was trying to look at the bright side of Roman's situation. But what he said reminded me of a very big question that I wanted to ask him.
Hell no.
This man goes, you know, I'm slightly jealous of Roman in some ways. Because when he was excommunicated, he was also removed from any future games, so he doesn't have to deal with them when they pop up. But what I'm really jealous of is that he doesn't ever have to vote, because voting never gets easier. And that rung the bell for me. This must have been the 10th time I've heard this term, the vote. But nobody had been specific up until this point about what people were voting for. Like, he briefly mentioned that everybody had to vote in a majority to excommunicate Roman. But Heidi and Dr. Doyle had both used the term vote in completely different contexts. I could tell it wasn't attached to these miscellaneous games. And I was about to start pushing for a further explanation about the vote when the innkeeper came from around the corner and proceeded to ask us if we enjoyed our meals. We both nodded our heads because they were fantastic. We were very grateful for what he served us. And he picked up our plates, but he also interrupted the moment that we were going to be able to butt in to ask Dr. Doyle to turn the conversation to more information about the vote. And since we didn't get to butt in to ask further, Dr. Doyle just continued, and he brought up a point that he felt was very serious to speak with us about. And in a very gentle way, he said, we're gonna have to have a discussion about what we're gonna do with your firearms. Nobody else has any here, so people are not gonna like the fact that you have them. And the innkeeper walked away with our plates as if he couldn't care less that we had firearms. But I could tell that Dr. Doyle was serious, and under the circumstances that we were in, it was definitely a serious discussion that we had to have. I was about to say, we could talk about the guns later, but right now, right this second, I'm gonna need more information about that vote. Cough it up. But my train of thought was cut off by a sudden noise that sounded like a small explosion. The sound was radiating through my body, and when it was about halfway through, I realized that it was the sound of a bell, like a bell tower bell, like a big bell. And it gave off a loud, heavy ring. It basically gave Bobby and I a jump scare. But all it did to Dr. Doyle was make him look into his lap as if he was used to the sound. But this sound could not have come at a worse time. The innkeeper came hustling out of the back room and speed walked out of the front door as if we need to go right now because that's some type of signal. And the speed in which he was walking made it seem like whatever this bell is, it must be very important. And Dr. Doyle looked at us very sternly and told us that we have to go right now. He wasn't going to be able to not give us any explanation about what this bell sound is, so he kept it very brief, but what he said thoroughly convinced us that we needed to follow him immediately. He said, I was hoping you guys would have more time to settle in, but the bell only gets rang when somebody's come across a game. I'm very sorry, but for everybody's safety, we need to go right now. And you two are one of us now. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I cannot guarantee your safety where we're going. We never know what we're walking into, but if the game allows it, I'll do my best to sway the brass. This is very unfortunate, but because you guys don't know anybody here, you might be easy targets. And my heart starts racing as we got up and started following him out of the tavern. I had no idea what kind of hectic game I was walking into. I didn't know if it was going to be something physically competitive or some type of riddle or some type of trivia. There was no telling what this was going to be. And just like every other sentence that he has said to us so far, there was something in there that I didn't understand that I wanted a further explanation about. He said if he could sway the brass, he would try to help us. But apparently it all depends on the game that's presented. And at this point, gonna be honest, I was very sick of not knowing what was going on. I was sick of not knowing the terminology of this place, and I was definitely sick of not feeling like I was in control. Part of me wanted whatever this game was to be some type of competitive game. For the simple fact that if I'm allowed to compete, at least I have some type of control over my fate. I didn't know any of these people, and none of these people knew me. But maybe I can make a statement on this first game that I'm not a pushover. I'm not somebody to be messed with. I don't know if I was expecting to walk up to some type of obstacle course, but it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. It also wasn't where I was expecting it to be. I felt like it was going to be presented right in the heart of the village, but for some reason, it was in a dense, deep part of the forest. And it wasn't anything extravagant. It was, again, a random table, like the one that we saw when we were out in the gap. And again, there was a random sign next to it. There didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason why this game was presented where it was. And I can only assume that that meant that they pop up in random places. Because when Dr. Doyle heard the bell, he said that somebody found a game. So that would imply that you had to go looking for them, which in that moment I realized that that was just another sick, twisted part of this whole thing. They don't just show up and present themselves to you, they pop up randomly in a random location around this general area at a random time. And the village members have to walk around, go looking for them just in case, so you don't miss them. Because if you miss one, it punishes you for ignoring it. So it's like you have to go looking for punishment. But anyway, the entire village has approached this random game and has surrounded it in a very dense part of the round side of the forest. And I start to think about our time in the gap where we had to take the cup, fill it with ink, and fill up the jar in order to get to the next section. So I'm looking on the top of the table to see what item goes along with this game, and all I see is one of those kind of like velvet string bags. Like imagine one of those types of bags that you would imagine a prince would hold a bundle of gold coins in. Or like one of those magician bags that have an endless bottom. And it was very clear as we were walking up to this game and as everybody was circling around it, that Dr. Doyle had major...
Hold on. Chat, what we think about the body twin? What we think, is my training going good so far?
He was a very
not my training, but my workouts and shit going so far?
Pretty much everybody. But there also seemed to be an underlying animosity towards him. And I know that people that are stuck in this place must be on their last nerve at all times. And it must be very easy to get under people's skin or to have people become upset. But
It's
they were
alright,
looking at
it's
him a little
alright.
bit
Type
differently.
shit,
They
twin,
didn't
type
seem
shit.
to just be irritated in general.
Type
They
shit.
seemed to be annoyed that they had to wait for
Type
him
shit, type
for the
shit.
game to start. They didn't seem to like that position of power. At least half of them didn't. And I wasn't really sure why they were showing that level of animosity towards him until I saw the way that he presented the game. Also the way that he read the sign before he even started speaking. And just like he said, the sign was written in Gaelic here, and nobody else could read it. All of us would just be buffoons attempting to translate it. So we had to stand there and we had to wait for him. But as I remember from the games that we played Beyond the Gap, it didn't just give you a very clear list of rules. The one that we encountered said it in like a weird poetic way that you had to decipher. And I noticed that he didn't read the sign out loud to everybody. And I could tell that that annoyed people because some people from the crowd, in a very antagonizing tone, shouted out, "Why don't you read it out loud, Doyle? We'd all love to help you solve the riddle." And wouldn't you know it, it was the same girls that were whispering in our ears when we first arrived back here. Blake was clearly the ringleader of whatever subdivision of this village had disdain for Dr. Doyle and Heidi. And she was shouting for him to read it out loud as if she was
What is
bringing
that?
up an
Not
old
being
argument
weird
that they've
here?
all
What you
had
mean not
dozens
being?
of times. And
What's
I looked to Bobby,
weird?
who I haven't had a
Wait,
one-on-one
what would be
conversation with
weird?
since we entered the tavern. And he asked
I'm
me,
so
like, dude, what do
lost,
you think
yeah.
that's about? And I start to think over the dynamics of why she would want him to read it out loud to everybody. And why something like that would be a sore subject. Until it hit me. If he read every single riddle out loud, word for word, people would be able to start attaching the words that are in English to the words that are in Gaelic, and they would start to be able to translate it themselves. And if they started to actually learn Gaelic,
They wouldn't
and
have to
became
need him.
confident that they can decipher these riddles and understand the games without Dr. Doyle, then they wouldn't need him anymore. So Dr. Doyle must be purposely not reading them out loud, and he deciphers the riddle himself so he doesn't give anybody any power over him. He stays necessary. And then he must tell everybody in his own words what the game needs everybody to do. He was protecting his skill for some reason. He was protecting his worth in this village. And initially I thought maybe it's so he doesn't end up like Roman and get excommunicated. Or maybe it's...
Take it back. I said beagle, not bagel.
Oh,
CarMax is a 10-day money-back guarantee. Why don't you?
because you need like razors and stuff.
Shit.
Experience CarMax and you'll never...
Wait, what did I say? I said body's tea or body's cool. What up, E Chief? What's going on, E Chief? What's
so
going
he could
on,
have more
Chief?
power inside of the community. But there was something else going on here. He was clearly being very protective of his skill. And the people that didn't have the skill wanted to cause drama around it. They wanted to rally the troops against him, to force him to teach other people. They were trying to make an enemy out of him, so he would give up the biggest advantage that he had of surviving out here. But it wasn't clear to me why they were trying to do this. I didn't really understand the motive. I guess
What's
the
going
games,
on,
I guess maybe so he doesn't get excommunicated, but it wasn't obvious. I didn't understand the turmoil here. It definitely didn't have to do with the fact that it takes him long to decipher these riddles, because he was already done. He figured it out in about a minute, and I could tell that he knew exactly what we needed to do. I could tell that he knew what the game was. He was just trying to figure out how he was going to convey it to the group. And clearly, it was not anything good. Based on the other game that he told us about, I was absolutely positive that this game was going to have a consequence that hurt somebody. But I could tell he was really contemplating how he was going to deliver this message. And he was very, very stressed about it. And Bobby and I are both bracing for impact because we have no idea what to expect. Then Dr. Doyle...
How long is the damn story? Fam. We literally got done with the first one. This is the second one. We're almost done with this one. It's an hour and 21 minutes, and I'm an hour done. Type shit.
At us directly. And I could tell he...
And guess what? We have another one after this. But I'm gonna watch it off live. And if y'all wanna watch these, look up that name right there. And you'll see this dude right here. Type shit. Hold on, I'm finna show y'all. That's him without the goatee. Oh, that's 10 months ago. Yeah, he said he a grown man now. Look. Him. Doug Corrado. Type shit. I was about to say, hell nah, brother.
Something
Okay.
very serious that he has to say to us, but he doesn't want to say it. And Bobby could tell too, so he shouts over to Dr. Doyle like, hey, it's okay, just say it. We had built up a little bit of trust with him in the time that we spent with him. So even if this was going to be something that was messed up and maybe potentially traumatize us, we wanted to give him the green light that we're big boys, it's going to be all right. It's okay, just tell us. Because if this is where we are now, and this is the game that we need to play, we're going to have to get used to it someday. So why not today? And Dr. Doyle finally breaks his silence by saying, guys, I just want you to know, I'm okay with whichever decision you make, and I'm not going to judge you. I promise nobody here is going to judge you. But this place, man, it never makes it easy. But I'm begging you guys to make a decision. Even if it's a bad decision, you need to make a decision, because something worse will happen if you don't. So right then, we know this game is about us. We know that we're going to be the pawns of whatever this is. It's probably not going to be good, but nothing prepared me for the psychological torture that this game brought to me. Dr. Doyle was very quick with his explanation of the game. He didn't say what the riddle said. He said his interpretation of the riddle to protect his skill. He said, we have two options here, everybody. Option one, the two newcomers can put both of their firearms in this bag and leave them behind, or the entire group can vote for one leader. And that one leader is going to choose the two people that these men are going to have to shoot to keep their firearms. Does that make sense to you?
Yo, this shit is so insane, bro. This shit is so insane. The shit is disarming them. Y'all don't know what came in here and killed that nigga, right? Y'all don't know what comes in here and kill y'all people. Y'all never seen it. None of that. If I have a firearm, right? I feel like the niggas that came in there with their own shit, their own sticks, should keep them. Right or wrong. And the two people we should excommunicate or shoot with these motherfuckers is the one that's causing the most problems in this bit. Blake and that other bit. Gone. Grits.
You can either hand them over, or we can choose one person and give them the power to choose two people that you can then kill to keep your guns. I felt frozen in time in that moment. I couldn't believe what that man just said to me. And not just because of how morbid it is, but because the idea of the group having to choose a leader, and then that leader has the power to choose two people that get sacrificed, but we're the ones that have to do the sacrificing.
Yeah.
And this is all based on us wanting to keep our firearms, which, if we did want to keep them, it would make us look extraordinarily selfish, and also make us murderers. It made me start to question everything in that moment. I had just started getting comfortable in this new reality. I just started accepting what was happening to us. But now it felt like everything up until this point was a ploy to get us to give our guns away. And everything before this was a facade to disarm us. I felt like everybody around us was an actor, and all of them were just trying to get me to give away my firearm. And right when I did, they were going to swarm on us and take us prisoner and sacrifice us in some weird ritualistic cult. All of this trust that I built up with Dr. Doyle and these villagers that I started to feel sorry for was completely gone in that moment. I felt like they were all in on it. I felt like they were conspiring against me. I felt like I was in the Truman Show, and everybody was just trying to get me to give up my firearm, and the only thing I wanted to do was keep it. If Dr. Doyle is able to keep his skill that keeps him safe here, why am I not allowed to keep my firearm? But then when I thought deeper about it, it didn't really make sense, because why would we have to kill two of their people to keep them? Why would this village of people that was potentially conspiring against me put up two people of their own? And the reward for that is I get to keep my firearm. Like, I could leave this situation with it. Like, there was an option here where I get to take out two of their people scot-free, nobody cares, and I get to keep my advantage. If they were all in on it and they were all conspiring, they would never give me those terms. And Dr. Doyle put even more pressure on us, telling us that we didn't have much time to make this decision. But he reassured us that he would be okay with either decision. He even expanded by telling us that People here have done far worse, and that no matter our decision, we have nothing to be ashamed of. He continued by saying that it's our first day here and nobody would look at us different. But I'm internally battling all of these weird thoughts because this could also be them dragging me into this weird cult. Like they're trying to convince me to kill somebody. And then they'd be able to blackmail me so I can't report them when I finally find an exit out of this place. My head was spinning in that moment so much that I thought I might pass out. I thought my lunch was going to come up, and I had no idea what to do.
Do you want to
until
know
somebody
something?
in the
What's up?
crowd of villagers raised their hand
You know,
as
I
a
like
volunteer,
learning.
and
I
I
like-
look up, and it's that chick Blake.
Knowledge is
That
power.
conniving girl is volunteering to be the leader to choose the 2 people that we would have to kill if we want to keep our guns. And then I see another hand pop up, and it's Heidi. And she's obviously volunteering because she knows if Blake is the leader, she's probably going to choose Heidi for the person that we have to kill. They both start playing politics, trying to rally the group to vote for them to be the leader. And the entire scene breaks out into an absolute frenzy of people whispering in each other's ears. And it kind of made sense because if I were in their position, I would think that I was fighting for my life. I have to choose the right leader that's definitely not going to choose me as the sacrifice. But even though I'm understanding why they're acting so crazy, I'm nowhere closer to an answer. I have no
Want to
idea
learn
what we're
Spanish?
going to do, and I
Que lo
can tell
que, mi
that
gente?
Bobby has
Que
no
lo que,
idea
mi
what we're
diablo?
gonna do. And another major issue
Que lo
about
que,
this is when
señorita?
I come to my
Que lo que,
conclusion,
señorita?
when I make
I kinda
my
fucked up 'cause I
decision,
like
is Bobby going to want to make the
type
same
shit.
decision, or are we going to try to do 2 different things? And as I'm thinking about that horrible scenario of Bobby and I arguing about what decision to make, a third hand pops up in the crowd. He's also volunteering, but this volunteer is very different because once he volunteered, everybody stopped whispering and they let him emerge from the crowd. So I'm looking this guy up and down, and like I mentioned earlier, how a lot of these village members have like various scars and like maybe an eye patch or
Yeah.
like a chunk ripped
Yeah,
out of their
I
ear
do.
or their arm or some type of physical injury. This man seemed to have everything under the sun. It looks like somebody dropped him in a blender and hit the pulse feature a couple times before plucking him out. This man was mangled, and he was clearly not volunteering to be the leader. This man was volunteering to be put out of his misery. I didn't think that that was going to be an option here, where 2 people were going to ask to be put down. But in a place like this, it unfortunately seemed normal. Nobody was gasping or begging him not to. People seemed more relieved than sorry for him, because these people are potentially fighting for their life, and him volunteering is taking one of their places and making their odds 50% better. So I whip my head towards Bobby. I'm absolutely
what
freaking
words?
out, and I'm hoping that he's gonna be the first one of us.
Bro, I wanna learn how to
express his
riz in
opinion,
Spanish,
because I don't even
fam,
know
like,
what my opinion is. The
that should've been
pressure of this
tough.
entire situation is clouding my decision making, and I feel in that moment, if I hear his opinion, I will be able to feel in my chest if I disagree with his opinion or not. So I'm looking at him. We don't know what to say, and then Dr. Doyle says, 10 seconds. And Bobby looks me right in the eyes and says, nobody's dying today. I waited for the visceral feeling in my chest to see if I disagreed with him, and it didn't come. I wasn't sure if I was going to feel the need to keep my firearm so strongly that I was going to have to convince him that he needed his. His answer and his opinion on the situation relieved me immensely because I felt the exact same way. Either these people around us were the absolute best actors, or this was the most sadistic game in history. So we run up to Dr. Doyle and we take our firearms out of our holsters and we jam them into the bag that's on the table and close the string. We didn't know if he meant 10 seconds to make a decision or 10 seconds to put them in the bag, but we had already made our decisions internally. So we put them in the bag as quickly as we possibly could. Dr. Doyle whispered to us that he was very proud of our decision and that he thought it was brave for us to give them up. That made me
Be
feel
like-
a little bit better.
Be like, how you doing, miss? Wait. Nah. Cause that's como esta señorita. So nah. I don't even know.
Better about it, especially
I don't
when
even
I could
know,
feel
fam.
the energy of the group calm
Just
down,
anything.
and
Teach-
everybody
teach
seemed
me
to be
anything.
fairly happy with our decision because nobody had to die. But then I heard one voice from the
Sister's birthday. She's an adult.
crowd shout, "They're unarmed! Get them!" I I turned around ready to throw haymakers at anybody approaching me. My worst nightmare came true in that one sentence. All of this was completely made up, and everybody in this group was conspiring against us to disarm us. We were going to have to fight for our life in this exact moment. I loaded up my right hand ready to send it across anybody's temple, but all I see is one girl giggling in the crowd of people, and everybody else is looking at her very annoyed. But she looks so satisfied with the panic that she put into me. Blake shouted that as a way to tease us. It was as if she knew what I was internally worried about in that situation. And when we made the decision that we wanted to make, instead of giving her the opportunity to be the group leader, she punished us for that publicly. And she was laughing about it as if it was some type of initiation, like, you gotta get your whippings. And she's walking up to us as if she's gonna continue to talk to us as if we might find her joke funny too, and we're gonna start having banter. And I see why Heidi hated this girl. I didn't want anything to do with her. Nothing. Like, part of me wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt because she's been in this horrible place for so long. And she was clearly coping with it with a horrible sense of humor. But to attempt to tease us and to make us the butt of the joke after that horrible situation came off as completely tone deaf and distasteful. But she seemed to be absolutely shameless about it, because once she got up to us, she immediately followed up with something just as tone deaf. In a snobby little weaselly tone, she said, "I heard you guys met Corey." And I thought back to the bickering that her and Heidi had about the fact that Corey was Blake's fiance. There was clearly some type of relationship drama and animosity there between Heidi, Corey, and Blake. But if she had heard that we had met Corey out in the Gap, she would have also heard that her fiance died a horrible, gruesome death. We found that man choking on endless black ink, unable to see and unable to hear. He was gasping for air as black ink was pouring out of his bowels. And she's talking about him like he's her little ex-boyfriend that she didn't like in high school. But this man was her fiance. Then she followed up with something again that made me feel even more uncomfortable with her presence. She said, "He wasn't man enough to make it through like you two. Two big, strong men." And she said it in this flirty, salacious, manipulative, horrible tone. I couldn't tell if she was mocking us or actually trying to manipulate us, because I couldn't imagine that this worked on anybody. Like, all it did was make it seem like she was an emotionless monster that only cared about getting people onto her side to tear others down. But before we're even able to respond to this psycho, Heidi comes in, breaking up the conversation between us again. Heidi's clearly trying to protect us from this venomous woman. So Heidi barges over and she barks at Blake to get away from us. But this Blake girl was not scared of Heidi's East Coast attitude. She was clearly antagonizing her, looking for an altercation anytime they interacted. And then Blake says something that's clearly a dig at Heidi. You know when somebody says something that you don't fully understand the relevance of, but after they say it, the person that they said it to is going to have to explain the relevance of what they said to you because they feel embarrassed about it. Blake clearly did that in this situation, because what she said to Heidi was, "Did you tell them about you and Corey?
I'm
Or
fluent
did you
in like
tell them
15
about you and
languages, so I'm
Steven?
bored.
Or are you
Name a
going to tell them
language.
how you started with
For what I
Steven,
should
tried to
say
take Corey
in
from
the
me, and now you're going to try to
language
hop to
not
one of
as
them?" Heidi just
Japanese.
repeated herself for her to get away from us. But Blake just said one more thing before she left. And it was obvious that she was
Japanese,
trying to instill the most distrust that she could. Did you tell them that the brass chooses who they
How
vote
you-
for and that they don't have a say?
What's going
Or are you
on?
gonna tell
What's
them
up,
that
twin?
they're
Just-
eventually
what's
going
up,
to have
twin?
to volunteer because they're ready? Then she even more mockingly says, "The brass are in charge. How did you end up out there?" To be honest, Blake's tactics were kind of working. And it wasn't because we didn't trust Heidi. Explain the relevance of what they said to you because they feel embarrassed about it. Blake clearly did that in this situation, because what she said to Heidi was, "Did you tell them about you and Corey? Or did you tell them about you and Steven? Or are you going to tell them how you started with Steven, tried to take Corey from me, and now you're going to try to hop to one of them?" Heidi just repeated herself for her to get away from us. But Blake just said one more thing before she left. And it was obvious that she was trying to instill the most distrust that she could. "Did you tell them that the brass chooses who they vote for and that they don't have a say? Or are you going to tell them that they're eventually going to have to volunteer because they're ready?" Then she even more mockingly says, "The brass are in charge. How do you end up out there? To be honest, Blake's tactics were kind of working. And it wasn't because we didn't trust Heidi. We had built up a little bit of rapport with her and Dr. Doyle. We'd been through a lot with her. But the things that Blake were saying were vague enough that we had to question Heidi about them after. Because even though there was little meaningless drama, there were small bits in there that were relevant to us that we needed more information on. Again, the term the vote came up and the term the brass came up. And this was the second time she referred to some type of relationship between Heidi and Corey. But this was the first time we heard the
Wait a
name
minute,
Steve.
wait a minute, wait a
Dr.
minute,
Doyle was
wait a
busy.
minute.
He was
Hold on,
getting
hold on,
pulled
hold
in
on,
another
hold on.
direction with some of the
That's
villagers. So our time
hard.
to
What
talk
the
with him was
fuck?
over.
15
But
languages
this
is
was the
crazy,
first
gang.
time we were able to talk to Heidi since we tried to escape. And we
Damn, that
could
low-key
tell
made
that
me
she
wanna.
was
How do you
extremely
remember which
embarrassed of
ones
all
is
of the
which
things
though?
that Blake said in front of us. Because Blake was insinuating that she could
5 languages.
I don't know how else to say that. I don't know how
Mandarin,
else to sugarcoat it. But anybody that was in
Jamaican,
Heidi's position would
French,
feel like they would need to defend their character. And as juicy as the
Haitian
relationship
Creole,
drama inside of this village was,
and
I was more interested in the votes and the brass. But Heidi was clearly more interested in clearing her name. So at this point, all of the villagers are dispersing from this sick gathering in this horrible game. And Heidi started
Russian.
walking in the direction of some of the other buildings.
If that's even how you call what you call their language, Russian.
So we followed suit without saying much because we were still trying to calm down from the pressure that we were just under. And as curious as we were, it was
But-
very hard.
Chat, I just realized it's 2:32. I'm finna go to bed. Actually, no, I'm finna finish this, and then I'm finna hit the bed. I'll hit y'all back tomorrow in the afternoon. Yeah, it's mainly called Russian. Oh, okay. Because they didn't want to offend people, you know what I'm saying? Like, damn, y'all still up? Yeah, I just been...
to muster up the right questions about the right topic.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just vibing. You know, just vibing type shit. But I'm finna get off. Love y'all. I'm gonna be back. You better be ready. Song dropping today too. Love y'all. Good night, peoples. I might as well stay up too. Gang, I just said I was finna leave. By nigga, I mean twin, you finna get the cleanest uppercut of your life, twin. Straight like that. Like, good night. Good night, y'all. Good night, y'all. Come back tomorrow.